meeting on Saturday, January 30th for our annual goal setting and work program review. And Madam Clerk, can you please call roll?
With pleasure, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Goethals.
Here.
Councilmember Pappen.
Here.
Councilmember Lee. Here. Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Here.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Here. Thank you for that. Okay, so due to the health orders in place at this time, we are holding meetings remotely. And when public comment is announced for the item you wish to comment on, when signed into Zoom call, use your raise your hand feature and you will be called on at the appropriate time by our city clerk. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. Information on how to provide public comment is also explained at the bottom of the official agenda. As this is a special meeting, public comments are accepted only for the items agendized. For the first item of business, which requires council action, there will be a staff report, council questions, and then public comment on that item. The second item is the annual city council goal setting workshop. And this is a working session, public comment on the city council's strategic plan and objectives for the 2021-22 fiscal year will be offered before council begins their working session. We have allotted 30 minutes to accommodate all individual speakers who wish to address this issue in order to allow us enough time to begin the working session. Okay, so we'll move on to new business. The first item, which is the mid-year budget update, supplemental budget appropriation. And for that, we have a presentation by our finance director, Rich Lee.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Rich Lee, the city's finance director. The item before you this morning is the 2021 mid-year budget. So first, we're going to take a look at the general fund. Just to recap, the general fund is the city's primary operating fund. That's where all of the city's tax revenues, as well as the majority of the city's operations, are accounted for. So the general fund, the amended budget had $129 million in total revenues and $137.8 million in total expenditures. We had projected an $8.8 million loss. At a high level, based on year-to-date revenues and expenditures, we're anticipating slightly better, a $6.8 million loss. So it's a $2 million better than what we had anticipated. And over the next couple of slides, I'll be going over the reasons for that favorable variance. I'm going to take a look at general fund revenues. And first, of course, our number one tax revenue, property tax. We had projected $63.5 million in total property tax for the adopted budget. And based on year-to-date revenues, we're looking at about $66.6 million. And these are the major components of property tax revenues, namely current year secured, excess ERAF, and property tax in lieu of VLF. And over the next couple of slides, I'll be describing those in greater detail. So for current year secured, we had budgeted $38.8 million. And based on year to date, we believe that we'll be receiving about $41.7 million. And that's really reflecting a greater increase in assessed value than what we had anticipated. Again, this is the largest part of property tax. And looking at excess ERAF. So excess ERAF is a bit of a misnomer. It's really, these are tax revenues that were taken away from county and municipalities' property taxes back in 1992. And so it's really returning tax revenues that were rightfully ours to begin with. Really, the reason for the budget variance in the current fiscal year is largely from a one-time remittance from the county for funds that have been withheld by the county because of a dispute with the state. We are one of 5 counties that have a dispute with the state on how ERAF is calculated. That has been partially resolved with the county, hence the release of about half of the $180 million. And the city's share of that release of funds is $1.8 million. So that's really the reason why. We are awaiting guidance from the state controller's office on how to calculate excess ERAF in accordance with their guidelines. And we should get an update on that from the county in a couple of weeks' time. And we'll definitely keep council apprised of those developments and how they impact the future of this revenue source. If there's any topic that I would want the council to note of this presentation, this is the one. Of all the tax revenues and all the revenue sources that are going to be presented during the mid-year budget, for the most part, they've been impacted by COVID-19, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they will recover based on the economic recovery. Property tax in lieu of VLF is a different story. This is not impacted by COVID-19, but rather what I would call a structural flaw in state law. Long story short, with property tax in lieu of VLF, in 2004, because of a reduction in the vehicle license fee, the state agreed to have a swap. So instead of vehicle license fees, they gave the municipalities property tax. The challenge with this revenue source is that it can only be fulfilled by property taxes from non-basic aid school districts. So there's two types of classifications for school districts, of which we have 26 in the county of San Mateo. Basic aid school districts are school districts that can meet their minimum funding requirement solely through property taxes. And then conversely, non-basic aid school districts are not able to meet that minimum funding requirement solely through property taxes. This is related to ERAF. Non-basic aid school districts that do not meet the minimum funding requirement then rely on the ERAF funding to meet that minimum funding requirement. The property taxes that are associated with those non-basic aid school districts are used to backfill the property taxes that are owed to all of the taxing entities in San Mateo County. The problem with that is there are not enough of them. And at current estimates, there are projected to be 6 non-basic aid school districts in the county. Why this is a troubling issue is this is an ongoing trend where the county believes that over the next 6 to 7 years, there will be no non-basic aid school districts in the county. Hence, every school district will be basic aid, and there will be, excuse me, no school districts to backfill the property tax in lieu of VLF that is owed to the cities. At present, there is a $69.5 million shortfall countywide, and the city's share of that is $4 million. Even though we are the second most populous city in the county, we are, in terms of proportion, we are the #1 city that's been impacted by this shortfall. There is a little bit of silver lining to this. The proposed 2022 state budget does include an appropriation for the shortfall that occurred in the prior fiscal year, in fiscal year 1920. At the end of the day, it was a $10 million shortfall. Our share of that was $600,000. So as long as the proposed budget remains largely intact, we will receive that money in fiscal year 2022. That is a 2-year gap. And at present, that is our sole remedy for this issue, is to file a claim with the state 2 years after the fact. And in a few slides, I'll be showing you the impact of that and as a part of the long-term forecast. But I mentioned that over the next 6 to 7 years, there's anticipated to be basically no non-basic aid school districts in the county. And given the growth in assessed value and the impact on the cities of the dearth of non-basic aid school districts in the county, what is now basically a $70 million shortfall over 6 to 7 years could grow to be in excess of $280 million countywide. The city's share of which, if the proportions remain the same, will be in excess of $16 million. Property tax in lieu of VLF is about 20% of our total property taxes. So this is definitely an issue that would warrant, has been warranting participation amongst the finance officers. And now, because of the structural flaw and the magnitude of this problem, the city managers group in San Mateo County is getting involved, looking to get legislative efforts, legislative relief, a fix, whatever you want to call it, in order to address this issue. That actually, San Mateo County is the only county that is impacted by this issue. So it's very unique. Napa County is the only other county that is potentially going to be impacted by this flaw, but at present, it's only San Mateo County. So moving on to sales tax. Sales tax is our number 2 tax revenue. And really this is the 10-year forecast, looking at historical actuals as well as projections for future fiscal years. The point I want to make with this is that our sales tax consultants believe we're looking at about a 3-year recovery. So if you see fiscal year 18-19 as a baseline, so pre-pandemic, we're looking at about a 3-year period until sales tax revenues return to that baseline. I do want to drill down a little bit. So on the left, that's an excerpt from the reports that we get from our consultant. And as you can see, these are the categories in terms of, with general retail being the largest category. And they've really been, you can see the impact of COVID-19 on a quarter-over-quarter basis. For example, this is the third quarter of 2020, a 23% drop from the quarter and the previous year. Contrasting that is Measure S. So Measure S is a transactions and use tax that was passed by voters in November of 2015. These sales tax revenues actually fall under different laws in the state. The local 1%, that's the Bradley-Burns Uniform Sales and Use Tax Law. Measure S falls under district tax law. The principal difference between the two is that district tax law is destination based. What that means is any online transactions are destination based. So one of the notions that we've heard anecdotally over the, since the pandemic is that there's been a significant increase in online commerce, and that's true. And that's the primary reason why you look at general retail comparing between the Bradley-Burns sales tax and Measure S transactions and use tax. It's significantly muted the impact of COVID-19 because of that destination-based difference in between the two tax laws. Shifting over to transient occupancy tax, unfortunately, this is more of the same. If you recall the presentation during October, we're looking at about 10%. So 10% comparison between what the city had been receiving in the prior year during the same period and what we are experiencing in the pandemic. It's slightly better. So we're looking at about between 11 and 12% now in the intervening months. However, it's more of the same. We're going to continue monitoring this through the Visitors Bureau, through trade information, but unfortunately, we're not seeing any relief at this point. On the brighter side, we do have the golf fund. So based on metrics, we have an increase in the number of rounds played, over 35,000 rounds of golf played. That's over a 12% increase. Our green fees, we have $1.2 million year to date. That's a 21.3% increase. And our range fees, 141,000, that's almost a 50% increase, all of which are pointing to, really, if you look at those last two data points, the fiscal year 2019-20 actuals and our 2021 estimate, we're looking at $2.8 million in projected year-end estimate for the golf fund, and we were only projecting 2.1. So really attribute that to the ability of the city to have the municipal golf course open, and one of the few things that has remained open since May of 2020. Shifting over to permits, fees, and fines. This graph is breaking down this revenue category into the primary elements. And at the bottom in the blue, or the light blue, those are parking citations. So if you look at the penultimate column to the right, that's our adopted budget. You can see a significant increase between fiscal year 1920 and the adopted budget. The difference in that, there was an assumption that the enhanced parking enforcement services would result in about a $1.1 million increase in parking citations. However, if you compare that to the column on the far right, looking at about a $1 million difference in between what was budgeted and what we believe the year end will bring. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. It's not as if the costs are there's a $1 million difference in the cost. So that's going to be reflected. The downtown parking and security fund that absorbs the cost of that contract. It's the general fund that realizes the parking citation revenues. So this is something that we'll definitely bring back to the council at a future date. And I'll have an update on the downtown parking fund in a few slides. Shifting over to intergovernmental funds. So these are revenues that we receive from other governmental agencies. Really, the only highlight here is the fact that the city did receive $1.27 million from the federal government through the state of California from the CARES Act. A little, potentially good news is that there's the American Rescue Plan being evaluated by the Biden administration. That's a $1.9 trillion package. $350 million of that is potentially for state and local government. That's the good news. The somewhat muted news is that if that follows the same proportion of allocation to state and local governments, the city of San Mateo's share would be roughly $195,000. So nothing to sneeze at, but it's not going to move the needle in terms of our revenue losses. Moving over to general fund expenditures, I really just want to highlight two things. One, as may be expected, due to the number of parks and recreation classes, programs that have either been canceled or shifted to the virtual world, we had a significant a favorable budget variance. However, that's offset by a significant reduction in parks and recreation revenue. The same could be said for library. Obviously, with the closure of the three branches and the main library, that's had an impact on largely per diem or part-time staff that normally maintain operations. Really, the only other highlight is the police department. As noted in the staff report, they had been providing a security presence at the Hillsdale Mall specifically for the Apple Store. And with the closure of all Apple stores in the state of California, that has ceased for the time being. However, we did incur a cost of $400,000 for that, for which we were reimbursed by the Apple Store. So part of the request this morning is that the council appropriate those reimbursement revenues to offset the cost of additional overtime. So we've already talked about the current year revenues and how they performed relative to the budget, as well as current year appropriations and how we're expected to, the year-end estimates are in comparison to those appropriations. When we last presented the long-term financial plan to the council in October, we had incorporated the projected impact of the CalPERS investment losses from fiscal year 2019-20, which will start in fiscal year 2022-23. What you see before you, and we have two scenarios. The first scenario is related to the VLF issue that I brought to the council a few minutes ago. Under this scenario, it's quite dire, and it's the scenario where the state of California does not make San Mateo County whole based on the shortfall in VLF. As I mentioned before, over this next 6 to 7 years, this scenario does play out. The likelihood that every single school district in the San Mateo County does become basic aid. And therefore, there are no school districts left to backfill the VLF that's owed to all of the taxing entities. In 6 to 7 years, this, what is a now $70 million shortfall countywide, could grow to an excess of $280 million. So that's what this scenario is showing, is the fact that we're not being made whole by the state for, they may have their own budgetary issues where they may not be able to make those appropriations in their budget. The other thing worth mentioning is that this will, of course, draw down our rainy day reserve. We're projecting what was $54 million at the end of fiscal year 2018-19 would be drawn down to $10 million. The other notable scenario or element of the scenario is that we would have to make $9 million in reductions to the general fund in order for this scenario to play out. That's a significant sum. One way that the council could address that is through maintaining that $3 million vacancy that we have in the current fiscal year. However, if that were to play out over a longer period of time, obviously that would result in a service level reduction. There would have to be other net reductions. So net reductions are either additional revenues or additional reductions that we'd have to make in order to meet that $9 million reduction. A second scenario, which is obviously more favorable, is where the state does make us whole. Even though there may not be a legislative fix, or I should say political will for a legislative fix. If they commit to making San Mateo County whole, albeit with a 2-year gap, not only would there not need to be any net reductions, but we would still continue to draw down on our rainy day reserve. However, we could have it grow back. This is all, this other thing I forgot to mention was that these scenarios have already been updated to reflect the current TOT trend that we're seeing, and a gradual recovery over the next 5 to 7 years of getting back to that 2019 baseline. So it's showing the economic recovery, but also, more importantly, this VLF shortfall being made whole by the state of California through an appropriation 2 years later. So I'm just going to toggle back between the two. Not only are our revenues below our expenditures here in this scenario, but in this scenario, we would actually be able to build, that's how we're able to build those reserves back up, is by essentially having this VLF shortfall being made whole. So looking at other funds besides the general fund, our construction services fund, really, I want to tip my hat to our community development department and our IT department for quickly getting us situated in a virtual world, getting our permits online so that we didn't have a service level reduction in the middle of a pandemic. Folks can submit their permits and pay for their permits all online. And that really we're being, the demand for those permit services, those inspection services are still there. And that's what we're seeing based on our year-end estimates for revenues and expenditures. So I mentioned previously about downtown parking and security fund. If you look at the primary revenue source, so the amended budget in the penultimate column to the right, the primary revenue source for this fund are revenues from parking meters. We were on a trend for $3 million in parking meter revenues. And that's really a reflection of, one, the council support for improvement in the parking meter infrastructure, namely fixing our parking meters and going with one vendor for those parking meters. However, because of the pandemic, the impact to our downtown area, we're estimating parking meter revenues of only $800,000. I do want to flip to our expenditures. So I mentioned that the cost of the enhanced parking enforcement contract is absorbed by the downtown parking and security fund. If you look at the operating budget compared to the 2019-20 actuals and the 2021 amended budget, there's a notable increase in the operating budget, and that is that cost of that enhanced parking enforcement contract. There's really not too much of a difference in the cost of operating. That's really outside of that contract where we're seeing some budgetary savings, and as well as transfers out from this fund. Looking at the fund on a long term, even without any additional transfers in from the general fund, and I'm emphasizing this last part, any transfers out for the foreseeable future. Those transfers out represent support for capital projects from painting the parking garages or new parking facilities in the city. There's essentially no additional funding support nor capital improvements over the next 5 years. We are still looking at drawing down on our fund balance and even going into the red. So a future consideration for the council is that in the very near future, most likely the next fiscal year, one of two things will have to happen. We either need to have continual support from the general fund to support downtown parking and security fund, or we will need to take the entirety of this fund and roll it into the general fund, similar to what we did with the golf fund. So that's something that we'll definitely keep the council apprised of in the coming months. And finally, the sewer fund, really just this is one of the few funds that we don't have. We have favorable projections for the council. So we had budgeted $63.5 million in total revenues. And not to belabor the issue, but sewer service fees are considered part of the secured role from the perspective of the County of San Mateo. We submit those fees to the county to collect as a part of the property tax bill. Because the county is on the teeter plan, the teeter plan ensures that all of the taxing entities receive 100% of the secured role. And if there's any late payments or penalties or interest, the county gets to collect those. But that assures the city that we receive secured property taxes as well as any service fees that are associated as a part of that. So that's why we're estimating $66.2 million in sewer service revenues. And then we have some salary savings and operating savings on the expense side. So the recommendation this morning is first to officially receive the mid-year budget update and to adopt a resolution to appropriate $400,000 of reimbursement revenues in the general fund for the police department operating budget, transfer $600,000 in the CIP project funding for the Central Park Garage Repair Project, project number 46F012 for the downtown parking and security fund to the parking and lieu fund, and approve increasing the permitted funding of the sewer lateral program by $225,000 using existing sewer fund budget appropriations. And with that, I'm going to stop my presentation and welcome any questions from the council.
Thank you for that excellent presentation, Rich. I'll bring it back to City Council. Do we have any questions for our Finance Director? I am not seeing any. Oh, Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. On the vehicle license fee, you say if the state decides to, I guess, send that money to us versus they were not sending it to us, it was withheld. But if they decide to do that, when would we know that, Rich?
So the way the timing works out is we identify what the potential shortfall would be through the county. And as the school districts file their their average daily attendance, and other metrics that are required to calculate what their minimum funding requirement is. That's around February or March of each year. However, it's kind of a bit of a moving target. So those numbers really aren't finalized until about 6 months later. So that's why the fiscal year 1920 shortfall of $10 million,
Wow.
the county didn't submit the claim for that until August of 2020. And we didn't know if the state was going to entertain that or not until late, basically a few weeks ago, when the state released their proposed 2022 budget. So it's that
Okay.
uncertainty that we would rather have a legislative fix rather than have that long-term uncertainty.
Yeah, I understand that. Fine. One more question. When you were showing the slide on the parking revenues and expenditures, I was looking at the expenditures line. So while the revenues go down, the expenditures continue to go up throughout that chart. Can you explain why that keeps going on? Why are we spending so much more money on the meters?
Let me go back to that slide that you spoke of, if I may. See.
There. I think it's the next one, Rich. No, the other way.
Oh, sure.
That one. So if you look at the expenditures line, so while the in 2021 estimated our revenues dropped severely, and then they don't recover for like 3 years, but every year the expenditures keep going up.
Correct. So the primary component of the total expenditures is that the cost of that contract for enhanced parking enforcement. And the assumption, and this is not exclusive to the Downtown Parking and Security Fund, is that they will continue to increase at least by CPI. And really the problem that we have is, one, we're assuming that it's going to take quite some time for not only the parking meter revenues to recover, but also that downtown commerce. And that really is tied. There's a nexus to those parking meter revenues. So it's a matter of timing. If we were able to get the parking meter revenues back into the trend line that they were at before the pandemic, then we wouldn't have this issue.
Right. So I guess the question I might ask the rest of the council members to think about is, if downtown is seeing less use and that's why parking revenues are down, do we need to have that much enforcement? So something to think about. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. I had a question for you. I'm not seeing. If you could use your virtual hand, it's easier for me to see because you weren't on my screen. So sorry, Emma, go ahead.
Thank you. So Rich, I was actually thinking that for the general public who are watching and tuning in, it would be helpful to help frame why the rainy day fund is so important to our long-term fiscal sustainability plan, and how it has played such an essential role in allowing us to be agile and responsive to community needs during this pandemic, for example. So, when we look at sort of the long view of recession proofing ourselves and being able to respond to global and local crises, I think it's really important for us to talk about the role of our rainy day fund or unassigned funding, and why we need that on top of the 25% operating reserve.
I'm going to borrow the phrase of my predecessor, who is now the city manager. During the Great Recession, the city's general fund in particular was woefully unprepared. We simply weren't in the current position that we were in. That's really the purpose of the rainy day fund, is to get the city through economic ebbs and flows. Granted, were we predicting a pandemic and an ensuing recession? No, but that's the purpose of the rainy day fund. And with the council's support, this is, if you recall the presentations going back to May of 2020, the council is supporting drawing down on that rainy day fund to get us through. The economy will recover. We're doing our best to keep updating our assumptions based on the information that we have from our property tax consultant, our sales tax consultant. It's going to take a few years to get back to the baseline that we had pre-pandemic. In order to essentially maintain that service level to our constituents, we have to rely on drawing down on that fund, on the rainy day reserve, until those revenues can recover. I'm looking at our city manager. He may want to add some flavor to that. Or not.
I think you covered it. I think you covered it well, Rich. Thank you. The only thing I would add is that this allows us, creating a rainy day fund allows us to have stable service levels to address ebbs and flows in the economy. So when things are going well, we put away money in preparation for times like now, where our revenue situation is challenged in a number of areas, and this allows us to maintain services to the community.
Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Peppin.
So thank you, Rich, for the comprehensive and downright uplifting presentation. I'm kidding. Is anyone awake? All right. So my question is, at the end of the administrative report, while we're talking about rainy day funds and reserves, you refer to operating reserve and budget stabilization reserve. And you indicate that we will have those two in total are 78.8 million. If I have that right, when all is said and done after this year and the hemorrhaging, correct?
Correct. So just to be clear, the operating reserve, that is the 25% reserve. The budget stabilization, rainy day fund, unassigned, those are all synonymous. So when you combine the two together, if you were to look at our financial statement, there's not that breakout of these types of fund balance. All that's shown is the accounting requirements that were required to show them in accordance with governmental accounting. There's unassigned, restricted, committed, and so you don't have that level of detail. That's why I wanted to make sure it's clear to the council what are the components of our general fund reserves.
Okay, so the operating is the mandated 25%.
Correct.
And then the budget stabilization is the remainder, plus a little bit for the housing set aside.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up on that line. So the vernacular seems to change, and I wanted to make sure I was following what was what. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for you, Rich. I'm getting back to the tax in lieu of VLF flaw. Is there, since it seems like there's many cities in the county that are affected by this, but we are especially affected, is there any way we can jumpstart that engagement process with our state legislatures? That I don't know if it involves our city council or teaming up with some other cities that are affected. It seems like it's a pretty big issue that we should probably be working pretty hard on as soon as possible.
So there's a few things to keep in mind. One, this is not a new issue. This has been happening to San Mateo County as long as I've been in local government. It's just that the shortfall has been smaller and it hasn't been as visible. There has been some discussion of getting involved with the League of California Cities. However, there just aren't enough counties that are impacted or local cities that are impacted in order for them to warrant, from their perspective, going to bat for San Mateo County. That's one of the reasons why we've asked the city managers group to get involved. They're much more closer to the state legislators and state contacts. We have sent letters previously. This council has to our state senators asking them for a legislative fix, and we did not receive any responses. So it's definitely in our best interests to try and get a legislative fix or this problem will continue to grow.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is now that it seems like if we have been trying the same thing and it hasn't been working, that maybe we need to try something different. And maybe because we are in this pandemic and our state legislatures are, they have some clout in Sacramento. I'm just wondering if we need to redouble our efforts and get city council members involved from not only this council but other councils, and really just kind of put on the pressure and talk about the situation. Meet with you. Letters can only do so much, but the in-your-face lobbying is also effective. But I saw our city manager had his hand up and wanted to add something there.
Yes. So I just wanted to add on to what Rich was saying. The city managers, there's a working group of city managers. I'm on that group. It's 5 of us. We've engaged with the county council, the county controller's office, and the legislative group. We have just late this week gotten an audience with the League of California Cities to explain this issue. So we have made some inroads there. In February, we're going to get a better idea as to what the true number is going to be for the shortfall. As Rich mentioned, right now the estimate is $69.5 million. There are a couple of school districts that are on the border between basic aid and non-basic aid, and whether if they move to non-basic aid, that will change the number. And so that's going to be known in February. So we are planning sort of a legislative sort of push on this issue, and we will look to get all of our councils involved. Just not right now, but we are working, and this is on very much in the center of our radar to get addressed. It is complicated, as Rich mentioned. One of the factors that's difficult is that we are unique in terms of our county, in terms of our situation. So it is a little bit difficult to get traction. And the other complicating factor is, to a certain extent, it does pit local governments against the school districts in terms of funding. And so we are trying to proceed thoughtfully with this, but we have made some traction with the league, and we'll continue to move forward on this. And Rich and I will both keep council updated and let you know when we believe it's the right time to get engaged with our local legislators.
Great, thank you for that very thorough answer. And I saw Councilmember Pappin's hand up first. You're on mute, Dan.
Certainly I'd be happy to help when the time comes, should you need it. I guess my question is, and I don't expect you to know the answer, but one of the things that may add force to the pursuit is how many districts/counties are getting closer to our situation as property taxes go up. So in other words, do we have any idea of when and how there'll be force in numbers on the issue? And if we don't, maybe we should find that out.
So yeah, it's a great question. We are looking into that. It was noted on the call the other day that yes, it would be nice if there were some Southern California counties that had the same issue. We at this point, we don't know how many, if any, are close to our relatively unique circumstance, but we are looking into that, because obviously there's strength in numbers there. But we do think that we are relatively unique and are not sure if other jurisdictions or counties are close in terms of hitting that spot where they're having that shortfall as well.
Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that it's a good route, a good plan to go through the League of California Cities, but nothing says, hey, these are my people, to a state senator, like a meeting with the new state senator who I've known for several years and is looking for things to help his constituents with right now. Okay. I think we should arrange a meeting, get 2 or 3 council members, the city manager, the finance director on a meeting, explain to Senator Becker exactly what the issue is. Let him get started, maybe talking with the League of California Cities and other legislators. I think the earlier the better. And I'd be happy to make a call and get us a meeting. Unless we have a liaison who would like to do that. Thanks.
I may through the chair. I've also been serving on Senator Becker's transition committee, so I could certainly bring it up there as well.
Great. So I think the message to our city manager is that we as a council, we think this is extremely important, and each of us are probably willing to do anything to help move the ball forward. You just need to let us know when you think the best time to do that is.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Are there any more questions before we open it up to public comment? Okay. So I would like to open up public comment, and I just to be clear, we want for this portion of this special meeting, we're only talking about the budget right here. And if you want to speak on this item, please raise your hand at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I have one speaker right now, Lisa Diaz Nash.
Great. Ooh.
Good morning, council members and city staff. I just wanted to congratulate city staff for delivering their budget commitments despite all the challenges of the pandemic. We have to continue to prioritize and reward going forward the kind of nimble and creative thinking that occurred, as in the development of the online permit portal. The city saved time and money while increasing customer satisfaction, and we need to keep that going. We also need to keep focused on managing our pension liabilities. Nothing surprising there, a top priority for our future stability. Going forward, I would encourage the city to enhance its funding of staff activities to ensure quality of life is protected as development continues. The vast majority of San Mateans want their city to continue to grow and be a premier peninsula city. This requires staff to have the resources, not just to approve development projects, but also to strictly enforce conditions of approval and address negative impacts such as traffic and construction, so that the impact on the lives of residents is minimized. That way the city can build trust among its residents and businesses. We all can be proud of how our city develops and feel great about living here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our next speaker is Reverend Ben Myers.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the words and the kudos from the prior speaker. Hi, I would like to echo the kudos from the prior speaker. My name is Reverend Ben Myers. I serve the Unitarian Universalist of San Mateo, and I'm also a member of the Peninsula Solidarity Cohort, a representative cohort of over 40 multi-faith religious clergy and religious leaders. We've come to you before, and I'm representing the cohort again on a number of items. I have been I'm very pleased to see some of the items that have asterisks next to them, particularly the housing issue, because as you were talking about setting aside for a rainy day, for many of our constituents and many of our citizens, it is a rainy day. It's pouring. And I believe that we need to, and we're encouraging you to really look at allocating funds for the those in most need. And to that effect, I attended a Home for All update on Thursday and discovered that over 130% of the goal for upper middle income housing has been reached, but only 20 to 30% for lower income. And so that's something that we definitely need to address. The other issue that I see on the agenda is pertains to wage theft. And this is a dire need. That's something that the city council can put together mechanisms to ensure that those most vulnerable who are actually having their hard-earned salaries stolen can have some justice. And these are people who are least apt to come forward and speak because they're afraid of either losing their jobs, being deported, being separated from their families. And then lastly, I want to encourage you to increase funding for mental health and to try and separate it out from our police, because we're asking too much of our police, and we need to have our first responders to be better trained to deal with those folks. There are many things ahead of you. We bless you in your encouragement, in what you're doing. Lastly, if you could be curious and courageous about looking at a base income for those most at risk to create stability and safety for them, that would go far. So thank you for all your efforts, but please do keep in mind those least able to present themselves and those most in need. God bless you, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no other speakers.
Okay, so I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council for deliberation. Do we have any comments on this item? I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adopt. Do you need three separate motions or?
No, just one.
Just one. Okay, that we adopt these changes to the at the mid-year point to the budget, which is the $4 million reimbursement from the general fund for the police, 600,000 capital improvement projects for the Central Park parking garage, and approve increasing the permitted funding of the sewer lateral by 225,000, which is a terrific program.
I second the motion in the staff report.
Great, Madam Clerk, can you call roll vote?
Yes. Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a study session. And it is the beginning of the strategic planning / goal setting process for 21-22. Goal setting is the foundation of our annual budget and approval process, providing both direction and framework. Today is the first step in a 3-step process with council discussing considerations and providing initial draft and direction to staff. No official action is going to be taken this morning. The second step is going to be a study session in which staff provides analysis of draft objectives with resource analysis and alternative considerations as needed. And the third step is a formal approval at our regular city council meeting of the proposed objectives for fiscal year 21-22, which becomes effective on July 1st, 2021. Given that we are in the second year of COVID, we need to be cognizant of our impact on staffing resources. And as a result, we'll be looking at a more limited additions to our priority list while we are still in the pandemic. Okay, so we will begin with a public comment, and we have 30 minutes budgeted for this period. If you intend to offer a comment, please raise your hand now. Only those who raise their hand at this time will be called on to comment, because we need to see how much time we can allot. And I'd also just like to add that we received numerous emails, and I can assure you that each council member has read all the emails that we received. And please do not feel like you need to rush through however much time you have to repeat the email. You could just talk about the high level points, because we did read it all. All right.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we have 4 attendees with their hands raised, now 5. I'll give it another few seconds to see if anyone else wants to join. So at this time, we have 5.
Okay, I just want to reiterate, a lot of times when we do this, there's folks that might be jockeying to speak last or maybe doesn't know if they want to speak. We're going to allocate how much time we have per speaker based on how many people are raising their hands right now. So if you want to speak, I encourage you to raise your hand now.
Okay, we have 6 speakers, and I'm going to say 6 is our final number.
Okay, so it looks like we'll be able to do the full 3 minutes for these 6 speakers.
Okay, first speaker is call-in user 1, who I believe is Karen Harrell. Karen, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Karen Harrell, I know that you received an expanded position statement from SMERG, and I'm sure you've all read that, and so I'm just not even going to speak about that this morning. Instead, I'm going to speak more as an individual. Excuse me. I spoke also at last year's Blue Sky meeting, and I'm going to largely be repeating some of the things I said last year. And of course, why are we all having this Groundhog Day experience about some of this stuff? And it's because of what's gone on with the COVID-19, which has paused so many initiatives and things that people in the city want to see accomplished. And maybe we're going to be able to get back on track now. It looks like a long, long hill to be climbing, but I guess we're going to all manage to do it together. I appreciate that you have all expressed support, both in the last regular council meeting and also in some of the things that came in for this meeting, for the expanded and starting up the general plan process again, and lots of good comments about community outreach and things about including the majority of San Mateo in that. But the city council, and this is why I spoke last year, that was your goal the last time around as well. And sometimes those things work out well and sometimes they don't. I'm asking that the city council should commit to more direct oversight, perhaps with frequent regular updates on your agenda about what is happening with the general plan process and also what is planned. For example, last year when we were looking for the various areas to be studied, a survey went up that was absolutely the most frustrating and difficult thing, where you were supposed to draw boundaries on a map on your computer, and after an hour I just threw in a whole bunch of generic comments and gave up. It was something that you'd have to be a computer programmer to deal with. Believe me, my next door neighbor, who won't even use the online library catalog, is certainly not going to be able to participate in something like that. So I definitely am interested in being sure that what's going forward is going to be really, really helpful. The one thing that I want to be sure is that the council commits to fulfilling its vision, its own vision statement, which has to do with consensus building. It definitely is something that needs to happen here. And one of the points that I would like to bring out is that you already have the opinions of 46,000 people about various planning issues. Some of them are on Measure Y, Measure Y, but also it's important to look at the vote that also happened on Measure R. And I hope that in the process that we're looking forward to here, we don't go down that rabbit hole again. Let's figure out what it is people don't want as much as what it is that people do want. So I appreciate your time, and I would definitely appreciate as much emphasis on what's happening in the general plan process on your parts as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carol Eldridge. Carol, please unmute yourself.
I think I've done so. Good morning, Mayor Rodriguez and members of council. My name is Carol Eldridge, and I thank you for the opportunity to present a few thoughts on behalf of One San Mateo. We're all aware at this point that, contrary to its initial billing, the COVID-19 pandemic has not proven to be a great leveler. Rather, it's fallen hardest on those who are least able to weather its attack. It has laid bare the vulnerabilities of lower income community members, many of whom, of course, are renters, many of whom are people of color, many of them are undocumented neighbors. Many of these people have been driven into destitution by this pandemic. If you believe that a significant part of your role as elected officials is to protect the most vulnerable, then it is important that you make a priority of bringing these community members relief. Their resources have been depleted and they do not have the ability to endure future upheaval. They need help. They need your help. I understand that in the current environment, you would be averse to adopting measures that require financial outlays on the part of landlords. They are being squeezed by this pandemic as well. But there are ideas that do not require financial outlays, ideas that have been implemented elsewhere and that have the potential to bring enhanced security and continuity to the lives of renters. So again, renters in San Mateo need help, your help. And on behalf of One San Mateo, I urge you to explore these other ideas and find ways to bring relief to the community members who have been hit so hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Diaz Nash.
Hello again, council and staff, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. And once again, kudos to staff for delivering so much planned and unplanned during COVID. There is overwhelming support for making the containment of COVID-19 and its impacts the city's #1 priority. We can't do that on our own. It requires close partnership with the county, state, health officials and facilities, businesses and residents. I believe our #2 priority after that needs to be supporting the revitalization of our small business community, upon which we depend for so much. We must move from the necessary reactive stop the bleeding approach to a more comprehensive proactive plan to support our small businesses and help them reinvent themselves. We must work with the Chamber, DSMA, SAMCITA, the businesses, and our residents. #3 should be to proactively find ways to develop affordable and workforce housing, not just market rate housing. I strongly endorse new approaches to this problem, like what Councilmember Pappen suggested, converting excess commercial space to residential and working on public-private partnerships. This priority must not be limited to just the building of the housing, but also to protecting the quality of life for all San Mateans after development and during it. More stringent codes of conditions of COAs, I'll get my acronyms right one of these days, and enforcement will not only increase satisfaction with quality of life, but also decrease negative environmental impact, such as increased construction dust, further silting our lagoon, where we already have serious problems. The next priority should be the completion of our General Plan Update 2040, as so many of you and the public have said. It's a great opportunity to chart a great, vibrant future for our city, but in order to build consensus across our population, we have to reinvent how we do community outreach to gain input from underrepresented communities and help people truly understand the impact of the various options and what they mean, particularly as we do it in a virtual world. Underneath all of this must be disciplined attention to managing our pension liability obligations, as well as continuing to be committed to measuring community desire and project impact, both qualitatively and quantitatively. This is critical to staying close to San Mateans' priorities and educating them as to the benefits of our planned city activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Lorraine.
Good. Thank you.
COA.
City Clerk. Good morning, Mayor, City Council, and staff. I am a Sustainability and Infrastructure Commissioner for the city, but these are my own opinions as a resident of San Mateo. I just wanted to +1 echo the comments made by Carol Eldridge earlier this morning and the Reverend Myers. Certainly, as we look upon the new year, it's raining for many in San Mateo and more so for others, some than for others. So along those lines, I just wanted to indicate my support for a number of the new priorities brought up by the council. The universal basic income by Deputy Mayor Bonilla, I appreciate and support, and I would continue support for any of the priorities that help our downtown businesses. The wage theft that's mentioned by the Deputy Mayor, and just in general, obviously we need to continue to prioritize housing. I know this council and is on board with that, and I appreciate it very much. So anything we can do, I thank you for the work that you've done earlier this year on the downtown parking lot sites and considering those for housing. I think that's absolutely on the right track. And I would just note that our general plan update just continues to need to prioritize as much housing as we can and affordable housing, specifically meeting our regional housing needs allocations for multiple cycles, as you discussed just a couple weeks ago. That has to be the top priority. And so I think if it is, we'll be on the right track there as well. Let's continue our funding and implementation of the Climate Action Plan and the Bicycle Master Plan update. I appreciate the green fleet priority. And I would just sort of add to what's been discussed on those, a note on let's see what we can do. I hope that our council can be open to partnerships on existing building electrification, as well as the reach codes that last year's council successfully implemented for upcoming to be built buildings. Let's see what we can do. It's a bigger problem than the city of San Mateo, but I hope we can do what we can and be a good partner as we look toward larger ways to combat that issue, which is the biggest part of the Climate Action Plan update in 2020. I appreciate a lot of the priorities that the council's brought up, so I just want to thank this council overall for a lot of hard work. I see a lot of amazing things in my city being proposed by council members of the mayor and the deputy mayor: equity and representation, alternatives to police response, and potentially closing B Street for outdoor dining to be made permanent. I'm totally on board with all these things. Thank you everyone for your great work today.
Your next speaker is Eric Wolfhard.
Hello, and thank you for giving me the chance to speak. My name is Eric Wolfhard, and I am a local pediatrician, and I'm also a member of our local chapter of the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition. And I am speaking to you in that role as basically the City of San Mateo group of the Bike Coalition. And I want to make my main point here, which is basically that we applaud the city's efforts to create the update to the Bicycle Master Plan in 2020. Big kudos to the city for that. And we'd like to ask the city to double down on that commitment by committing to build out the Bicycle Master Plan from 2020 over the course of the next 10 years and dedicating the necessary funds to do that over the course of these 10 years. Recognizing the budget shortfalls and issues that were brought up earlier in this meeting is obviously being important. The Bicycle Master Plan and funding it is critically important for the health and safety of San Mateans. And I would just like to say that, the whole goal of the city council is to keep San Mateans safe and healthy. And that's I think your charge. And I'd like you to please remember that as you prioritize the budget and what you choose to do with it. As a pediatrician who's studied the impacts of the built environment on health, I would just say to you that bike lanes and implementing more bike lanes are helpful for the health and safety of children and adults alike, not only in terms of bikers, but pedestrians and bike lanes have also been shown to decrease traffic collisions and improve traffic calming. Increasing bike lanes also, implementing bike lanes increases spending at local shops, more so than not having bike lanes, and has been shown to increase local property values. These are all different bike infrastructure benefits that we can see in San Mateo. And I'd like to just basically close by echoing some of the Mayor Rodriguez's sort of comments that, do we really want to be paying out increased costs to parking enforcement downtown, or would we be better served by investing in the long-term health and safety of our community by fulfilling our commitment to building out the Bicycle Master Plan over the course of the next 10 years? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Swire.
Hi, members of the council and Mayor Rodriguez. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk. I was one of the leaders of the Save the Rink Coalition in San Mateo a couple years ago, and I want to thank you again for your efforts there in keeping the rink open. And I wanted to continue today on the subject of kids recreation. I'm a new parent at San Mateo High School, and I would love for my kids to be able to bike to school there. One, we got to get rid of COVID, but two, I've heard from a lot of the parents there that very few kids bike or walk to school there, given the traffic dangers in and around the school. And I'm sure this is common at schools throughout San Mateo. So what I'd like to advocate for is that San Mateo lower the speed limits around the schools in town. Several other cities on the peninsula and throughout NorCal have done that. San Francisco, San Jose, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto. I know that budgets are tight, and money for big bike lanes and major infrastructure improvements might be difficult at this time. But the nice thing about changing the speed limits is it's a relatively low cost project. You don't need as many big studies. You change out a sign at a couple $100 a pop, and you can have a market improvement in both the decrease in the number of crashes that happen as well as the severity of those crashes. I know in San Mateo, they had a kid hit in this crosswalk and it just traumatized the community, and thus the numbers are really low. Of course, there would be huge benefits to this. You have healthier kids, smarter kids, lower costs in maintaining the roads when kids bike and walk as opposed to drive. And I also think this is going to become increasingly important in the, as we end COVID and even in a post-COVID world, because I think a lot of kids are going to be afraid to take the bus or do carpools. So if we want to avoid a situation in which every kid is getting, driven alone to school and have huge traffic backups and, the unhealthy risks associated with that, I think we got to do everything we can to get kids biking and walking to school. I've talked to a lot of community education leaders, the head of the San Mateo Unified School Board, Robert is on board with this, the head of the San Mateo High School PTO, the head of the Aragon PTO, the head of the San Mateo American Little League, the head of the Sarah Fathers Club, and they're all on board with this and pushing this to their membership. Again, it's a low cost and easy means to greatly improve the safety around our schools. And I'd love to help you guys out with that if I can. So thanks so much for making San Mateo safer for the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was our last speaker.
Great. So I'm going to close public comment and hand things over to our city manager, Drew Corbett, to introduce the goal setting workshop.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Rodriguez. So as we get into the strategic planning portion of our meeting today, first, I just wanted to reiterate that there's no formal action that will be taken today, just direction given by council. And before I turn things over to Tim Duncan, who's here with us for our 4th year of strategic planning. Thank you, Tim, for being here. I just want to briefly run through today's process, which is a 3-step process. The first step is we're going to review the current year's strategic plan. And we're going to focus primarily on the items highlighted in yellow. Those are the items that are either completed or we expect to complete by the end of the year, and we think can be pulled off of the strategic plan going forward. The rest of the items are ongoing items, and we've provided an update of where we are as of January 21st. If there are any questions on the non-highlighted items, we're happy to answer those today. One specific item on the strategic plan that I did want to point out, it's in the quality of life section, and it is the ban on smoking in commercial areas. I did want to note that due to other priorities this year and things that have been added to the list, staff has not been able to make progress on this item, so it's not been started at all. And based on this, what I'm recommending is that council consider re-reviewing this item as a part of this year's prioritization process, so it can get pushed into this year's evaluation since we haven't gotten started on it. So once we get through going this year's strategic plan, we're just going to briefly touch on major department initiatives. So these items are staff initiatives that require significant resources. They don't quite rise to the level of a council strategic priority, but we do want to highlight them as significant items that are being worked on kind of behind the scenes. And then finally, we will review and prioritize council's suggested priorities for the 21-22 fiscal year. And at this point, unless there are any questions about the process, I'm going to turn things over to Tim to get started.
All right. Any questions there? So good. Drew, thank you for inviting me back again. And council, it's good to see you all again. I want to know how you guys are all staying so young, and I just keep getting more gray hair. I'm not sure how that all works, but you guys are doing a great job. So, and you're the ones with all
It's called a filter. It's called a filter, Tim. I'll tell you how to use it later.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks. I get confused with those things, Diane. Geez. So as we move into the study session, as I have done in previous years, I want to invite you all to go to a little more informal mode now. I know you've all been formal in taking care of the official budget item that you needed to address, but I am going to switch over to first names. I'm going to invite you to do the same. We're going to keep this more relaxed, and I want it to be your opportunity to have this dialogue. This is one of the few times where you guys get to really sit and talk and have a good conversation about where you think we're at, where we need to be going, what things we need to be looking at, and translating that into the objectives that you wish to look at. So again, a little more informal, feel free to shift to first names. I want to remind you of a process that we're going to utilize. That process will be that we'll use a straw vote to have things as we look at new items. I'll review this again when we get to the section, but when we do a new item, it will require 3 of you to put it on the list to be considered as to its priority. I'll go over that again, but we're just going to keep it informal. We'll keep it moving as we go. As we go through the process, the first thing, as Drew just said, is we're going to look at the current council objectives and their status with whatever action needs to be taken. So, Kathy, are you the one who has this one that you're going to pull it up for us? Can you pull that document up and share the screen?
Absolutely, working on that. All right, does everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And it's appropriately zoomed.
Looks pretty good to me.
Great. All right, so unless there's any comments, I can move and scroll straight to the first yellow one.
Yeah, and if I could just, Kathy, to add, in total accordance with what you've been saying all morning, Eric, when anybody has a comment, please raise your hand electronically, and I will try and keep alert for that and call on you right away. If I miss it, feel free to somebody jump in and say, Tim, you missed something there. I'm never offended. So, Kathy, please walk us through this.
Okay, I'm just going to scroll straight to the very. Oh, I love how scrolling doesn't work when you're sharing screens.
Yeah, never as smoothly.
Oh. All right, is this?
Yeah.
The first one is the Age-Friendly Cities Initiative.
Yeah.
So again, all the ones that are yellow are ones that staff feels that we have moved forward enough to really take care of the reason why they were initially put on the priority list. The full detail of the status is in the packet that you've received, so I won't go through that for each one. Just raise an objection if you want to retain it as a priority. So we're okay with removal.
I have a question. So we did participate and were certified to become an age-friendly cities initiative, and then the 2 priorities were selected. That was so that leaves off at how do we then implement the priority, right? How do we take it from an idea to something that's resourced? So I guess I'm not totally sure what the decision point is in terms of us deprioritizing this specific priority or objective.
So I think the best person to respond to that would be Sheila Kanzian. Is Sheila on the line?
I am, and good morning, council members. The reason that we had indicated that we thought we had substantially completed it was this was really talking about the process of becoming an age-friendly city. Mm-hmm. We have identified 2 projects, excuse me, that staff is working on. We've identified the Senior Commission as the body that will continue to get updates on the progress of those. And so at every Senior Commission meeting, we will be providing an update in terms of how we're progressing on those. So This really, I think, becomes more of ongoing staff work rather than having it as a work plan item.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay, so I'm gonna note to remove that. The next one is implementing the online permit center. This is actually one of the initiatives we added at our September check-in that was pushed ahead due to COVID to allow better access. So I believe that's been completed. All right. The next one is enhancing emergency response times during peak traffic conditions. There are several related initiatives to that, including the creation of the police substation at the former fire station off of Norfolk area. And then also there's some signal prioritization for emergency vehicle pilots that are in process. And staff has not identified any like further work actions on that.
Rick, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Do we have any actual results of enhanced response times? Have we taken any measurements?
I am not directly aware. I don't know if our chief of police is available to respond to that.
Good morning, and thank you for the question, Deputy Member Bonilla. It's hard to measure response times due to COVID. The completion of the substation was completed just a couple months ago. We haven't faced the same traffic challenges, especially traveling from the west part of the city or the west side of 101, where the police station actually is, over to the east side. We haven't faced the same challenges that we faced pre-COVID. So it's hard to compare. Our response times are consistent. They've gone down a little bit, but nothing significant. The substation is open and being used. We're working on finalizing some signage and also placing an intercom or phone there that if there's nobody at the substation, somebody who walks up can be connected with a 911 dispatcher immediately. But to address your primary question, it's hard for us to measure that now because we're not facing the same challenges as we did prior to COVID that caused this concern.
Thank you, Chief. I understand now that you mention it. Thank you.
So I'm going to assume we're okay to remove this from the priority list.
Yeah.
Okay, the next two are easy: adopting a firearm storage ordinance, which has been adopted, and then the regulation of vaping and e-cigarettes also has been adopted. Rolling down, the next one is the one that.
Kathy, one question on the e-cigarettes and flavored tobacco. Are the actual postings out on those? Are there postings with that?
I believe, I don't know if Sean can answer this, but I know, for example, that the flavored e-cigarettes have been banned, and I know we've done significant outreach to all of the businesses that sold those products.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking because I stopped at a gas station on El Camino the other day, and I noticed a sign referring to flavored tobacco, but it didn't say a single thing about vaping and e-cigarettes. So I'm just wondering if the whole message got through to everybody. Is there any follow-up to ensure that shop owners are aware of the law being in effect?
Yeah, so actually I can share a little bit of what that's been done. So so the city and Samantha and the county have been all working together through the tobacco prevention program, and multiple notifications went out to the businesses to share that the ordinance was passed and direct them to a county resource, including an actual live person who could help answer questions and help bring the business owners into compliance. And there will be follow-up that will happen through, I think, the county sheriff's office in partnership with our own SMPD. And so there will be an enforcement effort as well that could also involve some volunteers. So the outreach is in place, the resources have been provided. I think that there will, it's still, in process, and they're, in spite of effort to notify and provide the support and resources, I think, this is a big transition for a lot of businesses. And so from my perspective, the city has been very proactive, and I assume that will continue to be the case, and it'll just take a little bit of time.
Okay, thanks. One more question. I see that the state law is being challenged, and of course the state law is a bit weaker and different than ours. But if it goes down to a referendum, does our law stand?
I'm gonna hope that Sean can address that.
Yes,
That's a good question.
Our ordinance is adopted pursuant to independent authority, so it should not be affected by the action at the state level.
That's great. Thank you, Sean.
All right. Move
Okay,
on, Kat.
moving on to the exploring banning smoking in commercial areas. This was a effort that Drew highlighted that we have not been able to begin. I will say that one of the primary aspects of this is going to be outreach to all the businesses in the downtown, since employees of restaurants and other businesses actually tend to be among the groups that are doing a large amount of smoking in the downtown. So that extensive business outreach really needs to be done kind of in person, on foot, or it's not something we can just send an email or send a letter, which is something that would take a significant amount of resources from the city manager's office. And so we have not had an opportunity to get to this given COVID. So the question is really, do you want to keep it as an A and move it to the next council goal setting? Do you want to put it on hold for next year, make it a B? These options are all before you.
I would prefer to keep it on the list. We could make it a B for now, and because we do need to focus more on some other things, although this is a very high priority for me.
I think that sounds reasonable.
That's 2. Do I have a third person suggesting that?
For me as well. For Eric as well.
Cool. I think make that one a B then, Kathy. I think we're in good shape for that as a recommendation. Thank you.
And then the next one is exploring the adoption of San Mateo County's disposable food serviceware regulations. You just had the first reading at your last council meeting, and the next reading will be this Monday. So we consider this adopted, and the city is fully committed to working with the county on implementation, which won't occur till 2022. I'll see my bad typing. Okay, the next one was evaluate our ability to do a standardized and routine statistically valid community survey. We did complete the first community survey that we've done in a while and presented the results to the council in May. I think it was a very successful effort. I would recommend either keeping this as a B or maybe taking this off the priority list for now. We certainly have the ability to move forward with another community survey at any point in time that we feel we have some important information to gather from our citizens.
Well, can I jump in? I think that I think it's important and strategic for us to consider doing community surveys on a regular interval to track changes consistently and public perceptions and needs and issues very routinely. And so, I am not sure if it belongs in, an A or B, but for me, this is something that, I think it could still be a policy decision if it's not this year, but maybe next year, that we define an ideal community survey schedule that, as a goal.
I'd like to add that I totally agree with that thought. Also, I'm looking at the language on this thing, evaluate our ability to do a standardized routine. I think we have the ability. We've done it. We can improve on how we do it, and we should. And I see that the follow-up here, proposed work plan to evaluate the results of the 2020. Well, we've already done that, right? We're hoping to evaluate further results from a newer survey at some point. And they were presented to the council. So I think this should actually just become a policy that we review and decide whether we need to do a community survey over any new things going on in the city, proposals that the city may be considering, changes in conditions, whatever. It should just be a tool that we use whenever we need. Thanks.
Diane?
Thank you. So I have a question about what this refers to, because one of the things that I'd put on my list was, more routine surveys. But is this one referring to, because we did a poll, which was, very expensive, it dealt with priorities and whatnot. And I thought that we could do, and I don't know what the council is thinking with respect to this one, but, like if you use somebody's service and they say, hold on, and you will be asked to take a survey if you would like to do that with respect to city services and stuff. Is that what you were thinking about with this one? Because that's where I was kind of headed. Like when a member of the public has an encounter, say, with a city service, they have the opportunity to fill out a survey about whether they're happy or not. Was that where you're thinking with this? Because I think that can be done relatively cheaply. Or are you talking about more like really comprehensive surveys, which is maybe a more expensive proposition and more involved? So anyway, I have a question about what it refers to. And my feeling is those little fast ones that you do could be helpful to allowing us to stay in touch with how we're doing. So what was the council thinking? I'm not sure.
I believe this was referring to the poll version, which is a statistically valid survey format versus the ones that are just, done via a survey platform like SurveyMonkey or others are not considered statistically valid.
Got it.
Generally, that's a variance between like a customer satisfaction survey, which is what we all get often after we purchase something, right? And then this, I believe, is referring to more of a broad across the board. And again, I think the key phrase there, as Kathy mentioned, is the statistically valid, which gets you into a larger population base.
Okay. So
it does sound like, just listening to your comments as an outsider, it does sound like that the question is, obviously you have developed a model for which to do this, and it sounds like you haven't decided whether or not you're going to continue to do one on a regular schedule or not. Eric.
Yeah, so I just my 2 cents. I agree with Councilmember Lee that it's important to do this on a regular schedule. I think we did develop our ability to do this, or evaluated it. We did it pretty well. I think it was our first one, so it might have been, at least in my opinion, a little bit generic or a little bit at the high level. But I think that one of the criticisms that I've always had is when we do these online surveys that anybody can send an email to their email list and everybody votes on it, and really we get the information and it's interesting, but we can't really make any inferences on it. I think that I would prefer to avoid that, and really, especially as we get into our general plan, and we're really getting into when we start looking at the different alternatives and the different trade-offs we're going to have to make, and also just the compromises of not everybody going to be to get everything that they want. I think that the statistically valid surveys, even if it's every 6 months, or maybe even once a year, who knows when it is, are just a valuable tool that we have to help us make sure that our policy is in line with those that we're representing. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Okay, so this doesn't relate then to survey how we're doing. It relates to survey what would you like to see.
Right. I think
Opinion
it's more what goes on there. Rick?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, got it.
Add that there was some mention of the brief surveys that you get after using a service, and I want to say I get a lot of those, and a lot of times if I don't have any problem with the service I got, I just kind of skip it. But I can guarantee you that we will learn if people had some kind of a bad experience, or they have a question about their experience. If there's something maybe we should know that's happening over and over again, we should look at fixing. I think some of those, and usually they're just made up. The computer sends them out. Somebody just clicks on 1, 2, or 3, and it goes away. And we collect that data. We know where we might need to make some improvements. I think we should consider that idea.
Well, I think that they're kind of, both are really good tools, but they're kind of for different things. Like, so for example, you know, how did you like using our interactive new virtual plan, like talking with the planner, like things like that? Or if you participated in a workshop, or even you spoke at city council, how did you feel? You know, can we improve it? That's one thing, and that's very targeted. But I think the other kind of more statistically significant survey is much more, it's just a higher level, it's a more sophisticated thing, it's less targeted, it's more open, things like that. I think that they're not either or, but both, if we want to use them.
Yes, totally understood. I know I was suggesting something else.
Yeah, no, I agree. We should probably consider both, you know, depending upon resources, but the statistically valid community survey as it relates to the general plan, especially with COVID and what we might perceive as to be difficulty in reaching folks. I'm not so willing to not prioritize this one. How's that for speaking in negative? But I agree, it's going to have some value to us with some of the things we need to accomplish.
Okay. Rick?
Maybe I should change this to revise to evaluate appropriate frequency for surveys.
Yes.
And then so we make that an A.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kathy, what did the last one cost?
I believe it's $30,000 per survey, 30 to 40,000. The poll version.
Yeah. So it seems like it's a pleasure of the council right now, Kathy, to move that to an A and to look at the frequency. It also sounds like it may get tied into a discussion around general plan usage. So.
Yeah, and so to Councilmember Goldwell's point, I recognize these can be expensive propositions. So if we did it, we'd be looking to do it sort of in a more tailored fashion, relating to perhaps some very specific topics and or choices and those sorts of things.
Right.
Because that is a reasonable question. How much did it cost?
Yep. Good. So Kathy, for right now, take the B to an A.
I put it in the notes.
Oh, okay.
It's all taken care of.
Got it.
So the next one is review development impact fees. That is a project that community development is, I think all the departments are in the middle of, and is expected to be completed by the end of this fiscal year.
Good
Cool.
to know.
Everybody's heads are shaking yes. Very good.
I think we're almost done here.
Everything else is alive and well and working is what I'm hearing.
I believe that was the last yellow. So is there any other comments on any other priorities or their ranking as a priority?
Hearing no, oh, Rick, you had a question.
Yeah, I just, I don't know why we're removing it, because it looks like we're not quite finished. I haven't had any complaints from developers recently about the impact fees. So maybe they don't know what we're doing. Are we talking with them about that as we go through this?
Rick, did you change your number?
Sorry?
Did you change your number, Rick?
No, I haven't changed my number. Okay, I keep that steady.
So as I just mentioned, this is a project in process. So okay. It's expected to be done by the end of this fiscal year. So again, we're looking at the work plan for what will be for starting July 1st, 2021. So we're anticipating having it finished, which is why we're recommending removal. But I don't believe outreach to the development community has occurred yet.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? There is another item that is on your current plan that we will discuss as we're going through your suggestions for the year, because Rick has one item that's currently on the plan that he wants to upgrade the priority of, and I'll let him address that when we get to that point in the conversation. All right, nothing else on this one. Let us then move on to information for you relative to the current major department initiatives. And if we can Denise, you're putting that up. Thank you. And Drew, I think you're going to walk us through that quickly.
Yes, I'll be very brief. So on this document, again, these are the items that are items on the departmental work plans that are significant enough that we want to bring them up to council's attention to make sure you're aware that these are initiatives being pursued, because they will take significant resources, but we don't believe they rise to the level of being on the strategic plan. I am not going to go through each of these in detail. I'm just going to highlight a couple items that I want to note, because the items that I note are items that are, while they're owned by a particular department who's managing the project, these are items that will involve most, if not all, city departments in terms of the overall implementation. So under the city manager's office, the first bullet, establishment of a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. That is going to be a multi-departmental effort that's led by city manager's office. We have gotten that underway. The committee has been formed and they're working on a work plan and deliverables for their first year. That will be a significant but very important effort for our city as we move forward. Scrolling down to the finance department, the Eden replacement project. This is the replacement of our entire enterprise resource planning platform. That again will take several years to complete and will require significant resources across the entire city as everyone has a part in the financial system. Moving down to community development, an important item that is under the overall umbrella of the general plan, but it is a separate deliverable, is the preparation of the housing element, which will be due in January of 23. So it's 2 years away, but there's significant work that we have to do to get that ready for that 2023 deadline. And that we'll be working in conjunction with the general plan update. And then finally, the last item I want to highlight, it's the first item under Public Works, which is the advancing of the US 101 southbound ramps at the Peninsula Interchange. We've had a couple of initial community meetings recently. This project has really gotten underway in earnest with the CEQA following, which will start this spring. So this is another major project that not only affects the city of San Mateo, but our neighboring jurisdictions. And so there will be significant work on behalf of Public Works staff to advance this initiative as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn things over to the department heads to answer questions about any of the specific initiatives that I did not note.
Any questions? Rick, your hand's still up. I'm not sure that's...
Sorry, it's from last time.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Any questions from anybody? Rick?
No.
Oh, you put your hand back up.
Oh, I took it down. It's low. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm viewing things through a reverse lens.
I got it. You know, I saw it go away, but then it came back. I'm just like, keeping aware here. All right, I'm not hearing any questions from anybody on this. That is true, yes?
Yes.
Okay, then moving forward, we're going to move forward now to starting the review of all of your individual proposals of things to look at and to consider. However, as we do that, what I'd like to recommend is that we take a short break. Are y'all comfortable with that? So let's do a, okay, I think it's like just about quarter to 11 right now. So what I would like to recommend is that we take, can we do only like a 10-minute break? A 10-minute quick bio break, get some new coffee, refresh your things. So we'll fire up again at 5 to 11. So I'll give it for everybody.
So civilized. Okay. It's only.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
All right. See you all in 10 minutes. Take a quick bio break.
You did say 10 to 11, right?
Diane, we have another 5 minutes.
Yeah, you got another 5 minutes.
Let me take full advantage of it.
Sorry, Diane. It was 10 minutes, and that would make it 5 till. So a 2-minute warning. All right, are we back? Yep, seeing faces. Who am I missing? Missing Rick?
No, you're not.
All right, good. All right, there you are, sir. All right, council, are you ready to continue the work?
Yes.
So Denise, would you pull up the proposed objectives for me? Thank you. So as we go into this portion of your work this morning, let me review quickly what I think are the ground rules that we've utilized last year and the previous years, and the ones that I'm recommending that we continue to use this year. And that is, you'll notice that all of your proposed objectives and ideas have a legend to them. If it's yellow, it's a brand new priority. It will need to be considered. If it's green, it's already there. So if it's green, we assume that we're addressing it. If for some reason you think we're not, we'll have a chance for input on that, but we're gonna hopefully move through the greens incredibly quickly. If it's got a light blue, that means it's an existing priority. However, it's being recommended to be modified in a significant way. If it has a asterisk on it, that means more than one of you think this is a good thing we should be looking at. So we'll have that kind of flexibility as we go through and look at these. As we have done previously, what I would like to do is I'm going to walk right down the line on the paper as it's shown up here, starting with Eric's material here, starting with the mayors and moving down. And we will go through them one at a time. If it's a yellow or a blue and requires addressing or modification, then what we're going to look at then is at the time, as we're going through it, I'm going to see if we have 3 votes. If we have, it'll take 3 of you to say, yes, let's put that on the list for ones we want to consider for starting in July. So if there's a new one there that we want to consider for starting in July, I want to make sure it's addressed and put on the list that we look at right away as we move forward. And then we'll go back at the end when we have everybody's that has made it to the list and assign them the ranking of A, B, or C at that point in time. Does that make some sense? So it takes 3 to get on the list. It takes then at that point, we will, at the end of that, consider the list. So Denise is going to keep me on track here on the going through the things, and Kathy's making a note of those that get 3 or anything else that we have to do for consideration at the end of this process. So with that in mind, Eric, I'd like to have you begin as we're going through this. And if this is comfortable, I'll just call them out and then you can make a comment on them. Number 1 is the general plan update. That is already on the plan. Is there any additional comments needed? Good. No. Number 2 is traffic mitigation. That too is on the plan. We want to keep that one going. Yes. Any additional comments?
Nope.
Good. Number 3 is a new one. Pedestrian and bicycle safety. Would you speak to it, please?
Yeah, this is just trying to recognize the fact that we're seeing pedestrian and bicyclists being it seems like they're being put more in danger, whether it be on neighborhood streets or trying to commute. And it seems like it's only going to get worse as the traffic comes back. I'm very cognizant of our budgetary limitations, but I want to try to put this a little bit more at the forefront of what we're doing and look at some of the issues that I know were brought up by a number of our speakers, a number of the emails we received on looking at what can we do that's the low-hanging fruit here that we can do this year or next year as soon as possible we can start moving the needle here without necessarily having to commit tons of funds to it. I personally think the idea of reducing traffic or auto speeds near schools is a very sound one, at least for me, from not digging totally into it and hearing all the implications. It seems like that should be something that we should be looking at. Additionally, in certain neighborhoods, we had a study session where our residents are crossing the street and they're getting hit by cars at what seems to be like increasing frequency. So, and I know we've made some strides there, but I'd like to keep that going and put that at the forefront of what we're looking at. So that's what I was thinking there.
Thanks, Eric. Diane, I think you also had noted this one. Do you have any additional comments?
No, the mayor makes it a bit more manageable than where I was headed. I was geared towards let's try to focus not just on grants, but long-term funding. But what Eric has put forth, I think, is a nice, good step. I am persuaded by this idea of lowering the speeds in school zones as well. But I like this idea of focusing in on some hotspots and deploying what limited resources we have to those hotspots. It's a great start.
But that being said, I really like Councilmember Pappin's approach too, that we're not like to speed that up to the how we're going to fund this, and not, I don't think it's either or, but what I think what we're saying is we don't want to wait. Let's see what we can, let's start getting the work on the low hanging fruit now, but let's also figure out how to actually make this one to be the plans that actually happen, not just continues to be a plan forever. So.
Thanks, Eric. Rick?
Yeah, thanks. You know, regarding schools, I'm totally in favor of doing whatever safety work we can do there. We're already doing the safe routes to school work, which comes to us through CCAG. But, you know, I started talking a couple of years ago after I made a trip up to Portland, Oregon, where they lowered all residential neighborhood 25-mile-per-hour speed limits to 20, right? And I came back and spoke about it, and I was told a couple of different reasons why it couldn't be done, something to do with some state issues. But I feel this is an issue, lowering the speed limit at least at school locations to at least 20 miles per hour. Okay, it's a big difference between 20 and 25. 15 would be great, but if we could just get it down to 20, I don't think it really would take that much work or be that expensive. It's a matter of some signage and some enforcement for a while. I would really support that. I think overall, this is a great item that the mayor's brought forth. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Amherst?
Yeah, I'm also in favor of at least studying where there are opportunities legally and feasibly to lower speed limits surrounding schools, and where there might be collision hotspots that we know of and have identified. You know, on one of the recent council meetings that we had, we were looking at our Smooth Streets initiative, and basically what the takeaway for me is that the financial outlay that we're making really it achieves no failed streets by 2024, but long term, if we don't increase the investment, then our financial outlay will be significantly more. And so I was thinking that there might be an opportunity to overlay the some of the project priorities from the Age Friendlies initiative for pedestrian safety with the rapid implementation plan for the bike and pedestrian master plan, with this sort of new way of looking at our our Smooth Streets initiative through the data lens of safety and circulation safety and traffic safety and our collision data that is now becoming available through our GIS system. So I think that there could be, some immediate short-term fixes like lowering the speed limits. But I think also there's an opportunity long-term to think about where we're putting resources, where there might be resource alignment opportunities to merge together some of the priorities that have been really citizen initiated through the Bicycle Master Plan and and the Age Friendly Cities Initiative. So that was sort of where I was hoping we were leaving off on the last conversation we had. And I guess this is sort of a question to Drew. Is that a direction is that where you left off? Am I right in thinking that there is an opportunity there? And if so, is there a council consensus to move forward?
Drew, you want to respond to the question?
Yes, and so there is opportunity there. I think, I mean, one of the first steps that we were going to take, and I think it aligns well with this, was, as we prepare to present the budget later this year, we'll do a study session previewing the budget. We were going to expand a little bit on the capital section to talk a little bit about how we prioritize what's going to get funded and how we prioritize those fundings and some of the trade-offs that occur and then some of the ways that funding could be shifted and what trade-off that would create. Because I mean, ultimately, what we're competing with is for the general fund funded projects, and a lot of that money goes to our streets and the paving program in lieu of doing sort of bike ped work. And so we were going to put something together that covered those trade-offs and provided, you know, some options for ways that we could fund things differently, you know, but again, what the trade-offs would be and what the cost benefit that would be. So I mean, I think that that's really a step one. And so I think putting this on the 21-22 strategic plan would be a good next step.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of it. I think, you know, the community has spoken very loud and clear, and I think every single council member is well aware of this issue, and so I absolutely support it being a priority A.
Thank you. Joe?
So I think concisely, we can just say that bicycle and pedestrian safety infrastructure is an A. I think everybody would agree with that.
Yeah, we don't have to do the A thing right now, Joe, but since all of you have said positive things about it, I'm guessing it's going to be a pretty slam dunk A when we get to that part of it, right? So good. Thank you very much. Kathy, clearly this goes to the list. Moving on the Eric's list, housing affordability is already agreeing. Eric, speak to small business recovery.
Yeah, so, you know, this is one of the frustrating areas where, you know, our small businesses, which are such a huge part of our community, need as much help as possible. As a city, it's very difficult for us to help them directly financially. We tried early in the pandemic, but we have our own, you know, financial struggles. And so we've done a lot for them. And I think Jennifer Chen and her team have really carried the ball forward on this very well. I just want to make sure that we are being as proactive as we can to help them over the next 6 months, this next year. We get one-off emails of various businesses trying to suggest ways that we can help them. I also want to make sure that we as a city council, or we as a city, I should say, are bringing in all the stakeholders, whether it be the chamber, DSMA, the usual suspects. And we might be doing a lot of this now, but I'd like to formalize it, at least in this difficult time we are right now, just if anything, to make us feel like maybe we don't need to do anything, but we're just listing it as an A, and we know we're doing everything we can possible. But I get the feeling that we could be doing more.
And two other council members, I think both Diane and Amaris, you both spoke to this one. Do you want to make comments, please?
I don't know. Sorry, Amaris, did you want to go?
Please.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think we're all in concurrence. If we can get together a committee like this, it's on everybody's radar and it helps enhance recovery. I'm good to go.
Amaris, did you have a comment as a person who had it on your list?
Yeah, I like the suggestion of putting a structure around it, the formation of a committee. I also think that there's potentially an opportunity to think about our own internal staff resources. Jennifer Chen is one human being, and there are only so many hours in the day. And so, you know, maybe we can bring on some volunteers or interns or more analysts, management analysts like Denise, who are stellar. You know, if there are ways that we can also beef up our staff capacity to support this initiative and to drive the human capital that will be required to you know, to power any initiatives that come, you know, out of the committee, I think that's another way to look at it.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, I totally support doing everything we can within reason to help our small business community. They've been suffering. It's a difficult time, just like anybody else who we need in our city to pay sales taxes, right? We need that money. So I don't know if we need a committee, but we can talk more about that. I think it might be good if we just make it easy for them to apply for state or federal aid, because there seem to be some small waves of those things that keep coming across. And I don't think all the small business owners are necessarily looking at all the channels they need to be able to look at to find and be able to easily access this aid. Maybe if we just let them know that we've created a page on our website where they can go and see an explanation of what's available and click on a direct link to be able to apply for it, that would be greatly helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. 4 of you spoke to it already. Joe's shaking his head yes. I think this one has moved to the list. Yes. Good, thank you. Moving on, again, number 6, Eric, is a green that's already on there. And any other comments on it?
No, with that one, I wasn't, when I submitted this list a couple weeks ago, I was not aware of how much progress we've made on that. And I'm very happy about that. So I'm happy that, you know, I don't have any more further comments, but I was really pleased with the update that I got on that, and nothing else to say.
Thank you, Eric. Number 7 is the pension liability management. Again, already on there. Any comments on it?
No, thank you.
Good. Moving on to Rick's list. His number 1 is already on the plan. It's already developed a plan for a green fleet by 2030. The second one, so I assume that's...
Well, but I didn't put it on there without wanting to discuss it.
Okay, go.
It is as of current a B, right? And yes.
I don't know. Is that sorry?
That's what it shows on our current fiscal year objectives.
Okay. Do you want to change that?
Yeah, I want to change that. Right.
Okay.
So I think the environment is crying for an A. Okay. And I know that we have certain amount of vehicle miles traveled that our employees must generate doing their work here at the city all the time. But I think we need to actually analyze how many VMTs do we have and what can we do to either diminish those or go to a fleet that's not emitting. I think that a couple of ways, we already looked at one, which is encourage employees to live closer to San Mateo. Easier said than done. But under the status update for January 2021, it says that staff is reviewing current CNG gas replacement program, which I think is kind of a stretch, knowing the difficulty in converting and or purchasing CNG fuel vehicles besides heavy equipment and trucks. I'm talking about a fleet that's running all over our streets. And so I think that we should move this, we should seek to either have a plan in place, step by step, what we're going to do over the next couple of years to really, if they're reviewing already, as it says, you know, let's make a plan that the council can see and talk about it. Let's get a report and see if we can stick to it, because this is something we really need to do.
So your modification on this that you're recommending for consideration is moving it from a B to an A.
That's correct.
Got it. You can lower your hand, Rick.
I'll try.
Yeah, well, good for it. Yeah. That way I know when you want to make a new comment, right? Helps me. Thanks. Patrice, I think you could actually help on that. If Rick gets to put his hand down as host, I think you can lower it for him. So, you know, help him out on that one.
I will do that.
Thank you. Other comments? It takes 2 more of you to move this to the list to be changed. Otherwise, it stays on your plan as a B currently. Are there 2 other council members who wish to join Rick in moving this to an A consideration?
Would it be possible to hear from Public Works or the city manager just to better understand what, you know, what's feasible in terms of the next steps? And is this something like, what would the difference between an A versus a B look like in terms of the work plan?
Drew, you want to take that?
Sure, and Azalea can chime in if I don't cover everything, but I think, you know, we are monitoring things. We do expect the state to continue to move forward with regulations that would require us to continue to move in this direction. We, just as a matter of business, are looking to make our fleet more green as we move forward. We've put a bunch of hybrid vehicles in place for our pool vehicles. We are utilizing the CNG. We're going to bring back a study session item later this year on kind of where the CNG fleet stands and kind of where that is going forward. I think I think where staff gets a little uneasy is just a directive to have the fleet, a plan to have the fleet green by 2030. Just not knowing if we're actually going to be able to achieve that, if there will be the vehicles available to do all the work that we need to do that are green by 2030. I mean, I think we're going to continue to work on it. We're going to continue to strive to be, environmentally conscious as we purchase vehicles. It's just sort of that 10-year deadline and whether we will actually be able to get vehicles and acquire vehicles that are green, electric or CNG at that point or by that point.
Rick?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, all I'm asking for is a plan. And what they say about people or entities that don't plan, okay? We don't want to be there. If we don't at least plan with some kind of, we can always change. If we're not getting there, we can change. But I think we should develop a plan to reach this goal, okay? It's meaningful. The governor's pushing us that way. I believe we can do better than his 2035 date. But like I said, the environment is crying for improvements here, and we should be leaders in this community. So, thank you.
Joe, wait a minute, Diane, sorry. Unmute, Diane. Thank you.
It sounds like what the things that Drew just ticked off are what the city is doing to create a plan. So I think Rick's request is a reasonable one to put a plan in place. Build a plan to fail. But in any event, there will be just some flexibility because obviously sometimes it can involve a lot of costs. But I agree, just getting some specific steps that can maybe work with the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission to get a plan together that at least outlines the steps we're going to do. It seems to me without a whole lot of staff resource on it.
Is there a third council member willing to move that to the list?
I'm with it, and even if it's just starting with something like a study session to to present to council and the community what has been done and what is in place already, and then parlay that into a more formalized plan. Or it could be a study session that goes to the Sustainability Infrastructure Commission. I think I would agree that my assumption is that this is feasible and not a heavy resource requirement on staff, but I want to hear differently if that's not the case.
I think that's the next step. So the items that are prioritized is A, staff will go back and identify what resources would be required to execute to these, and we'll bring it back to council to let you know if we have any concerns or what would have to give up in order to do this. I would agree on the surface based on the discussion today. I think that this is something that we could accomplish, but we'd like the opportunity for Public Works to be able to take a look at it a little bit deeper and determine what could be done.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be a third then.
Good. All right. That moves to the list for consideration of moving from a B to an A, and that will come up then at the end of this entire session here. And again, as Drew just pointed out, and Amaris, as we look at those issues, we'll have your A list and your B list in the second step. This is today's the first step. In the second step, you'll get and receive an analysis of if we add your A's in, does staff have the resources? Does it look possible? And if there's trade-offs needed, then you as a council get to evaluate that and make your decisions. All right, Rick, your second one is again moving from a C to an A, and that's adopting a wage theft protection. So I want to speak to that, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this one I've been working on for a few years, as staff can attest. I have a presentation to make. It's gonna take a few words here to explain what, why, and how. Okay, because the how has gotten easier. I'm ready to lower my standards to what another city has recently done, Milpitas, and I have information about how they're doing it, which I can share with anybody, but especially staff, and I've already sent it to them. But anyway, okay, we all took an oath, and the job is to plan for and support and defend and protect the health, safety, and well-being of the people of San Mateo. That's why we're doing so much on COVID. It's a moral imperative. Poverty must also be a moral imperative. It is for me. Okay, I, as a council member, cannot look the other way, knowing there is poverty, overcrowding, low wages, and yes, even wage theft here in our city. I'm totally committed to stopping wage theft. I will further describe why and the scope of the need. And in terms of one question that seems to be, you know, in earlier meetings with staff, how? You know, I have experience with this. At one point in my career as a union representative, I discovered, and with other representatives, we researched, and we managed to get an employer who was under threat of court action and so forth. And this shows how callous this is, really, this crime. They know they're doing it. There's nothing funny about it. But it was, we came up with a total of $4 million in back wages and benefits and $1 million in penalties. This employer, once he saw what was facing him, pulled out his checkbook, wrote a check, smiled, got up, and walked away. Okay, so a lot of people, when I discuss, when I mention what I'm thinking and talking about here, ask me, wage theft? What's that? It's not a widespread thing. It's a mostly unreported crime, and it is a crime. So let me just give a brief description, okay? Wage theft is the denial of wages or employee benefits that are rightfully owed to an employee. Wage theft can be failure to pay overtime, minimum wage violations, employee misclassification, illegal deductions in pay, working off the clock, or not being paid at all. Workers and communities, responsible businesses, and taxpayers are all negatively affected by wage theft. And I will explain that in a minute. If you do search wage theft on the internet, you'll find out it really is a thing, and it's very widespread. Several different sources you can look at, but I went, of course, since I'm a member of the Carpenters Union, we've been working on this for about 15 years as a union. We've taken a lot of action. We've got a lot of legislators, mostly on the East Coast and in the South, active and working on this. But according to our website, which you can look up, in the US, 2.4 million people lose $8 billion a year to wage theft. This is nearly half as much as all property theft in the US, which is at $16 billion a year, according to the FBI. More than $8.4 billion a year is lost to construction industry tax fraud. So if you look at, there's an article, a search result for wage theft on Google, and it's a GQ article, right? And it quotes the Economic Policy Institute, which I also looked up, and I have some of the materials that I would like to share with anybody who's interested in following this up further. But wage theft happens, according to this article, wage theft happens on construction sites, in restaurants, nursing homes, factories, farms, food processing plants, landscaping, and many more areas of employment. A 2018 Good Jobs First survey found that the overwhelming majority of companies caught committing wage theft are, quote, the giant companies included in the Fortune 500 and the Fortune Global 500 and the Forbes list of the largest privately held firms. This includes Walmart, FedEx, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and State Farm Insurance. Bottom line on this, there are many points of connection between wage theft and tax fraud. Both negatively impact regular, honest, hardworking people in a way that is unseen or unfelt unless you become aware. Employers who steal wages also do not pay their full share of payroll taxes. They don't make their contributions to the state unemployment office, and they do not pay for workers' compensation. Guess who does? John Q. taxpayer ends up picking up the bill for all of these shortcomings. The public bills need to be paid, and they are paid through taxes. Normal, honest working people end up paying higher income taxes to help workers who are cheated out of their pay, because workers are cheated out of their pay and do not pay what would be their own full and fair share had they been properly paid. The EDD coffers are going there in part because these employers have not made their contributions for every hour of work. So the EDD coffers are down, not only because of fraud, but also because employers are not paying their full fair share. When people get hurt at work and their employer is not paying for workers' compensation, they seek their medical care on the public dime, and they get it. We pay. Immigrants, non-English speakers, the power of the paycheck. Many people, despite the fact that their wages are being stolen on some level by, for instance, being forced to work an extra hour every day or skip meal breaks and lunch breaks, which are legally required, and there is actual compensation delineated in the law for that, that's wage theft. The problem with that is when you don't get those breaks, you get tired, you get hungry, you get sloppy at work, and in a dangerous job like construction or food processing, lots of these other jobs I spoke about, that can lead to accidents, and then we're paying again. So these people are generally seen as the exploitable workforce. And because they're getting a paycheck, maybe not all of it, they don't leave, they stay there, they don't report it. It's a largely unreported crime. We can take an easy path that has been drawn out by the city of Milpitas. They recently, I picked this up on the news because they recently improved their wage theft protection laws. And they have a nice handy dandy wage and hour guideline. I don't know if you can see this, but I sent this to our staff also. At the bottom, it refers people to the Department of Labor Standards Enforcement, which is a state office, and they have a local office in San Jose to report crimes. It also gives them the city phone number for economic development if people need, have some questions about things. But this list of important information is very good guidance regarding how this can be handled. It's now less work than had been presented to staff when we spoke about it earlier. And so this is something, like I say, I can't rest at night thinking about people that I know who are being taken advantage of. It's real, it's happening here, it's happening now. In my mind, and to me, it's a moral issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
Well, yeah, so I thank you, Rick, for elevating this again. And, when I was working in an immigrant service organization in Queens, regularly there would be workers who would come through the door who've experienced wage theft. So I'm very personally aware that this happens. I'm sure that this is also happening in our community. I think, my question is, what is the internal capacity for our city looking at organizations like community-based organizations like the Samaritan House and the Workers Resource Center, looking at Legal Aid Society, looking at Catholic Charities? Are the CBOs insufficiently resourced to meet this need? Because in my experience, this is part of the service suite that a lot of specifically immigrant focused organizations already offer. And so my question is, is that something that the city can contract with the Samaritan House? Because we already have a contract in place for the Workers Resource Center. Is this something that needs to be folded in as a matter of making sure that folks aren't falling through the cracks and that they know what resources are available? Or are you saying that the landscape is totally barren and that this is not in fact a service in place in this county?
So what I'm saying is that we may be able to find ways that lots of times we end up having to fund, like the Samaritan House and these other organizations, to help people. But the truth is, we're letting criminals off the hook we're ensuring that the taxes that are not being paid will continue to not be paid. We need to have some way to impress upon these criminals that they're vulnerable. They can be caught. If they do, they'll have to pay. Okay, I think we should do both. It's not an either or, it's an all situation. Like I say, I found an easier, gentler way for staff to actually do this, and I have the documentation. I'm just asking that we be allowed to pursue this and let staff work up whatever the report is about it between now and when they come back to us. But I think we need to have it on our plate as a work item.
Joe? Joe?
So I think Rick is right in many ways about the problem and about how serious the problem is. But just like we talked about earlier today with regards to excess ERAF, it's not just a city of San Mateo problem, it's a much larger problem. It's the kind of thing that needs an infrastructure, and Rick's right that this is a crime. It should be elevated to the district attorney's office. It should be law enforcement. We should be building an infrastructure at a regional level that can deal with this. And so for that reason, I don't know that the city of San Mateo can take this on by ourselves, and we should be advocating for a more regional approach with our other partner cities.
So what I'm hearing right now, and Rick, I know you have an answer, but I'm interested right now. I want to see, because our job today is not to solve it. Our job is to decide whether or not you're going to move this from a current C level to a level priority, and then staff will do an analysis of what that requires. You're not solving it today. So I'm going to try and pull us out of the rabbit hole here a bit and see right now, if I may ask, how can I see a show of hands of people willing to move it to the list for consideration of moving it up on the priority from a C to something higher? Got one hand, thank you. Any other hands for moving it up right now or leaving it as a C?
Well, I'll say, Rick, between you and me, I would like to, not as a council priority, but as a passion project. This is something I care about. I would love to work with you. I would love to sit down with Bart at Samaritan House and figure out what is in place from community-based resource and capacity perspective. And maybe we can take that learning forward and move this to a council priority in a future session.
At this point in time, then, Rick, people are empathetic to what you have said and have not chosen to move it to the list for further consideration. Therefore, it will continue as a C on the current priority list. Can you speak to your last one? Implement a universal basic income program.
Yeah, I will, but I'll start with this one. It's not a very heavy thing. There are a couple forms that the employers or developers, contractors sign, or any employer sign, saying, I have employees, this is how much I pay them, okay? And if it's a construction project, at the end, if they have any wage actions against them, which the city was not involved in doing, but the city will find out if they have any wage actions against them. They have to either pay those wage actions off, or they have to take a bond that then would enable them to get their certificate of occupancy. It's not that difficult. Anyway, moving on to basic income. In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King said, a guaranteed income would abolish poverty. And this means reducing income inequality as well, okay? Right now, the US economy dropped by 3.5% in GDP last year. Its growth dropped by 3.5%. Unemployment is up. In California, right now, it's 8.8%. In the US, it's 6.7%. Some people are working double shifts, trying to make ends meet. And think about that. If you have an 8-hour job and you're shoveling or slinging hash or all sorts of mostly menial labor jobs that the people on the bottom rungs in our society are doing, who are not, they're struggling to get by if they're getting by. Many are moving away because they can't afford to. But if they stay here, they're seeking aid from the Samaritan House and other places. But at the end of a long, backbreaking day, are you ready to go to work at another job? Nobody should have to work that much to try and keep a roof over their head, food in their kids' mouths, and some health care. And by the way, most of the health care these people get is, again, on the public dime, because our system doesn't provide for sufficient health care. So you might think, well, they can get unemployment. But our unemployment department, as we all know, is a mess. It's lost billions in fraud. The system had outdated computers. Claims are way behind in processing. And people who are undocumented won't go there, right? And the little bit of government aid that's been coming out, check for $1,200 or check for $600, that's not sustaining. That money gets spent right away to clean up some debts they have. Okay, so, excuse me, I need a drink of water. What is universal basic income? The intention behind the payment is to provide enough to cover the basic cost of living. Once again, all this stuff is readily available on the internet. There's a lot on it, okay? And it is a thing, and other jurisdictions do it. And it doesn't mean that everybody gets some money. Right now, it's being studied in South San Francisco since Councilmember Mark Nogales brought it up a few weeks ago. Their city manager eagerly said he will start looking into it right away. But it is the idea that people who are below certain income levels would receive a monthly stipend or a payment, money they could use to meet their basic needs. The concept is also seen as a way to offset job losses caused by technology. As we continue to get more productive in this country, jobs are lost to technology in many different ways. It might be just modern equipment at the food processing plant that eliminates jobs. There's 1,000 different examples of that. So the plans differ on who receives the income. Some would pay every citizen regardless of income. Others would pay only those who are below poverty. One proposal would pay just those left jobless due to a robotics plan that 48% of Americans support. When asked, the government sends a check, but plans differ on who funds the income. Some plans call for a tax increase on the wealthy, while others say corporations should be taxed. So a few takeaways. Universal basic income provides everyone with a minimum living wage, and like I say, cut off at a certain point, okay, to alleviate poverty. Whether they're employed or not, if they're making too little money or if they're unemployed, they need some help. And our entire community benefits from this because they don't save that money, they don't invest it, they go out and spend it. That's increased economic activity, okay, in our community. And this idea has been around for like 500 years. So it was proposed to address, okay, many counties, states, and cities are experimenting with pilot programs right now. So like I say, South San Francisco is looking at this right now. And I would posit that we should, and I know Drew has already spoke with the city manager there, and he said that they're just starting up, but as soon as they get something going, then he would be interested in sharing. I think we should look to collaborate in this work with South San Francisco to try to find a way that works here on the peninsula, because we have some similar situations here. At the Economic Policy Institute, I think you've heard of them before. Here's a headline: employers steal billions from workers' paychecks every year. But beyond that, they talk about basic income. And if you just look, like I said, on the internet, Stanford now has a basic income lab. And if you go to the website and just search, like I said, again, basic income, you'll find this. And they're actually studying on a major scale what can be done about it, okay? This is an idea whose time has come because we have too much income inequality, too many people work too much and still can't get by. Okay, and once again, to me, like I say, it is a moral issue, and I have a problem with it, and that's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Are there two other council members willing to join Rick in adding this to the list? Go.
Well, I'll just say that, I mean, I think it's, I don't want to leave you hanging, Rick, in terms of not having any response. I mean, I did a cursory search to better understand how Stockton is implementing this. And it looks like it's entirely funded through a Facebook-backed research and advocacy organization called Economic Security Project, and only has $1 million of seed funding, so it's not a sustained program, and it only services 125 folks. As you said, it's means tested. So the model that exists at present is in its nascent phase. I mean, it's very, very early, and it has no sustained financing model or funding model. So the concept is incredibly important to consider. The need is absolutely there without question. I don't see this, I just don't see this idea being far enough along in its implementation for us to glean any meaningful directives at this stage. And so I think it's something to keep an eye on, but if we can get an ear with the Economic Security Project and they want to come do a pilot in San Mateo, I'm all for it. I just don't see how this squares with the other priorities that are so present. And I think that there are also so many examples of the ways that the city of San Mateo has dedicated funding to meet community need, in the example of our $300,000 to the San Mateo County Child Care Fund, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we dedicated to rental assistance, and San Mateo Strong Fund to support the businesses. So it's not for, it's not like we're just sitting on our hands and doing nothing. We are dedicating resources to meet community needs, and we're doing it in very strategic, directed ways. A $500 check to 125 people through a VC-backed advocacy and research organization is just not a sustained plan. It's not.
So Joe, Rick, hang on a second. Joe, you had a comment earlier.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Rick, and I've seen the conversation that's happening at a national level, but here in San Mateo, we've dedicated all of the resources that we have to ending homelessness, to assisting working families with housing, with childcare, with other services. I think we need to continue with those efforts. And really the conversation right here today is, should we take staff time away from what they're working on right now in order to work on designing a project that doesn't exist and that we don't know what it would look like? And I don't think that that's clear and direct communication with our staff on what they should be doing. I think we should be continuing the conversation in the community and seeing if there is a model that we would support, but it's not there yet.
Diane?
Yeah, I would concur on the two themes here. One is infancy, if not embryonic state of the concept. The need is certainly there, absolutely, no question. And we are trying to help in the other ways that we've done it, including every last dollar that we've gotten in CARES money has been rechanneled and streamlined as fast as we could possibly get it to those in need. So the priority of assisting is there with this council. This spending the resources to develop a model. I know San Francisco has a very small program that they've started with pregnant women, and I think it's It's Black and Pacific Islander women, and it's about 100 folks, and it's all the way through delivery and then 6 months after that. That's another model that, would really help those most impoverished that get pulled out of the workforce to have the children of tomorrow. So there are different models out there. They're being kicked around. The need is great, but I just feel like it's something that is embryonic at best, and we don't have the resources right now to develop it. I'd rather that we spend our money sending it directly into the community via Samaritan House and our other partners to meet those immediate needs right now. But Rick, I hear you, and I think this council hears you, and we appreciate your voice, and we will do and commit what we can resource-wise to achieve some goals of getting the assistance that we can to folks.
Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly weigh in and say that I share the sentiments of Diane, Joe, and Emma.
Thank you. Rick, final comment?
Yeah, final comment. I just want to say that really all I'm asking for is a study. Later we can decide whether or not we want to do a pilot based on some study information. Like I say, it could be limited as a pilot to any particular group, and it could be based totally on what we may be able to find funding for. There are large, well-funded biotech and high-tech companies out there looking for ways to contribute to the community. If we come up with a plan and make a pitch, we'll get money that's dedicated to that. People are looking for ways to help with this. And furthermore, I think giving money to Samaritan House is not giving money directly to the community. People have a sense of dignity when they get some money, a check at their house, and they can decide how to spend it, what their priorities are. Okay, it gives them a leg up on feeling as though they belong. Because as long as you're going to those places to just get a free handout, you feel like you're one of the others, one of the people that a lot of people don't even see standing on the corner of the street. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Do I have 3 hands? I think I only have 1 right now. Still only have 1. All right, thank you, Rick. That one will stay as an idea. I think the council is asking you to bring that back again and not lose track of it. Moving on, Amaranth, will you speak to number 1, reviewing municipal code provisions that impact the development review process?
Yes. So, I mean, I think that we've talked about this in many meetings and heard about this from the development community as well. And I think that our own council has a real commitment to figuring out how to streamline our internal processes and find efficiencies so that we can move projects forward faster. So we can kind of get out of our own way. And so that is, that's the intent behind number 1 here.
Other comments? Do I have, okay, so how many hands do I have for moving this to the list for consideration?
I have a question. Weren't we already doing some of this work?
I thought some of it had been done. I thought I heard reported that some of that had been done. Drew, can you comment on the status of that?
Sure. We've got a number of different initiatives going on within community development regarding the development. We're bringing an item on Monday night regarding uses downtown. We are doing some ongoing code cleanup. So if this item is prioritized, what we'll be able to do is come back and talk about the things that are currently being done and any gaps that there may be between what we're currently doing and what's on this, and what the specific request on the strategic priority list is. I think that I think that largely what will happen is that you'll see that we are working on most of these things. I think having it as a strategic priority would help just keep it as an area of emphasis for staff. But I think that most of the things that are being considered are already contemplated by the item that's listed.
If I may just jump in for a second, I do want to highlight the fact that this is starred is because it was a staff recommended priority. At the very last page, Denise, if you don't mind scrolling, we have a handful of priorities that were recommended by staff, and that was priority number 1.
Okay, you got my hand to put it on, if it's an ongoing effort and we need to make sure it stays on the radar, I'll join in that.
Good. We have 3 hands. We have 4 hands. Very good. Thank you. We have sufficient hands to move that to the list. Emma, speak to number 2, increase public visibility and awareness of community benefits for developments.
Yes. So I think we've heard a number, and especially through the general plan process, we've heard time and time again, what does all this building get me? Why does it feel like it's a detraction? And I think that there is a fundamental sort of misunderstanding oftentimes in the public sphere about what the city's role is in negotiating community benefits and making that more known and visible in the community. And I think that we have a public facing development portal with outlining the specifics of every single project. And I think that it would be really valuable to include in each page the description of what are the total impact fees. Like I think one great example of that would be Concar, where we had I think it was like, is it $9 million or $10 million in total community benefits, and that is nowhere to be found on the city's website. So I think that that is sort of a low-hanging fruit way that we can help elevate this to the public awareness and point people to reference and resources so that they can understand when they look through the map at a project, how this is actually bringing resources and infrastructure investments back to the city.
Drew, I have a question. Eric, go first. Eric, go.
I was just going to say, when I read this, I thought it was a great idea. And it's like one of those ideas like, well, why haven't we been doing this all along? The only question I have is this a priority we want to put on, or is this just something we should just say, hey, can we just go ahead and do it?
Yeah, I'm good with either of those.
Yeah, and Eric, that exactly was my question. I was going to ask Drew Drew, this seems like something that could just be incorporated as a portion of what's already existing.
Yeah, I think so. If I could speak to number 2 and number 4, I think both of those items could be just do it items. If we could take the opportunity as staff to just go back and make sure I'm not missing anything. But ideally, what happens is when we come back for the next phase of this process and talk about resources, that for both of Councilmember Lee's item number 2 and number 4, that we just say, hey, we can implement those right away and get going.
That would not require them to be listed as a strategic plan priority then, right, Drew?
That's correct.
Well, so it wouldn't require them to be listed as a strategic plan priority, but there is an advantage in having it as a listed strategic priority, especially if we're already doing it, because it shows that we are doing it and that it is a priority. So the exercise of what goes on, the decision of what goes on to the strategic plan priority, if it's not a resource cost, but it is something that we're showing that we're doing in response to community feedback, I think that in itself has its inherent value.
I always agree with good publicity. So I like your point there, Emirates. I think what I heard Drew say, Drew, you can clarify this for me, is to remember that things you're identifying that go on your strategic plan become, they're really the plan that starts July 1. And what I thought I heard Drew say is that these 2 items are things that could be implemented within the operational resources immediately as a really good idea. So therefore it wouldn't need to be in your plan for the next year, because you could literally have it done in the next month or 2.
Well, I think it's sort of in between, right? I think that what we would do is, my initial my initial thought is that both item number 2 and item number 4 would be sort of the just do it items, so that we wouldn't need to necessarily wait until we got to 21, 22. I do want to give staff an opportunity as part of the process to go back and review and make sure that what I'm saying is correct. But assuming that's correct, what I guess I'm saying is we could keep these on the list, right? I agree that if there are things that we can do that are priorities that we're able to go ahead and just do before we start the fiscal year, that we can keep them on the list them as A's, but we can just get going on them before the start of the fiscal year.
Even better.
Okay. So from what Drew said, and I don't want to take away from any of your comments on number 4, but our council, are you willing to move these to your list, both 2 and 4? Move those to the list right now, and we can be done with that conversation. And then you'll hear from staff that they can just pull it off right away, and in your next session. There's one hand, Eric. I got a hand.
I just had a question.
I got a hand.
I
So
wanted to just make a comment, if that's okay.
okay, good, Eric. Go.
Because this, I mean, it doesn't matter what this seems is, like we have a to-do list and we're putting on like the easiest one that we're going to check off right away at the top of the to-do list to make us feel better. But that's how it feels to me. But I do think that when we create these strategic plans or these priorities and it's just this huge list of different things, I think when we start adding things that we don't really have to, because it's going to get done anyway, I think there's some negative effects there, in my opinion. But I mean, this I don't care if it gets put on there and checked off right away or what, but that's just my thoughts in general.
Okay. I still think I saw enough hands to move 2 and 4 to the list, with some acknowledgement that when the resources analysis comes back, they may be pulled off. Rick. Oh, you were just voting for it. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I hear what Eric is saying, and at a certain point, you just want to keep it concise as to and manageable as to initiatives that we really have to keep going and working through. But it doesn't bother me to keep these 2 on. I don't want to create a pattern of that, but I think these are good ones that we'd like to keep at the forefront with respect to the public. So I'm okay with that, but I don't want to do it on every one.
Got it. Amherst, number 3.
Yes. So number 3 is apply an anti-racist and equity lens to our recruitment and vetting process for staff and appointed leadership positions. One example of that would be the Equity Task Force would make recommendations for data collection and updates to applications for boards, commissions, councils to track community representation and community engagement and language skills. So, we know that this council is committed to robust and inclusive community input and engagement. We know that there are hard to reach populations. We also know that there are many populations, neighborhoods, geographic areas, many demographic groups that are underrepresented. And that could be better represented if we had a stronger pipeline and stronger outreach to the positions of leadership and the bodies of leadership. And so, I think that this is one of those decisions where, this is an example of where the road meets the rubber. When we talk about how to make ourselves a more representative leadership body, and when we talk about how to exert and improve our own internal processes to make the city more accessible, to make each voice heard loud and clear. That these are very concrete and simple, straightforward ways that we can do that. And when I asked the question of, what has been the process to develop the applications and the questions for the council candidates, for the boards and commission application, how do we know that that the boards and commission application pool is in fact representative demographically? How do we know that we're getting a diverse perspective and skill set, geographic representation in our leadership bodies? And I think what I'm seeing is that we don't know, and that we don't have very clear processes, and there's an opportunity to improve those.
Other comments? Yeah, go Rick.
Yeah, I agree with these thoughts and comments. I feel we can do a lot better here. I know that I think the city is currently looking at putting together an equity task force, but I think it's all internal employees. I think we do need to have some citizen involvement, and a much closer look can be done, because I feel there's a lot of room for improvement here. Thank you.
Joe?
I agree that this is a great conversation to be having right now, and I think we should elevate it. I think that it should be in collaboration with the community. This is something we've tried to address in the past. We've looked at the makeup of our commissions. We have all acknowledged that it's very hard to recruit diverse candidates for commissions for various reasons, and I think that we should continue that conversation by trying to tear down those barriers to engagement with certain parts of our community. We want everyone to be participating. That's good governance. It's good democracy. Now is the time to be having this conversation.
Diane?
Yeah, I would concur. We did try to do it before. I'm certainly open to tracking it further. I remember it came up that in order to serve on a commission, you had to be a citizen and I think registered to vote, or at least a citizen. So there was the hard to reach populations of populating our boards with that. There was some difficulty before, but I'm all for tracking it. That this is okay with me. The time is now to do this kind of work. So I think an equity task force gives us something concrete to the structure within which to work to make sure that we are tackling our equity concerns. So I'm all for it. Let's go.
Okay. We have enough votes there to put it on the list. Rick, do you have any other comments?
No, I'll drop it. Thanks.
Okay, so it's on the list. Number 5.
Okay, so number 5 is assess the efficacy of strengthening the existing red tag ordinance to increase penalties for repeat offenders and recover costs for staff time. This came up, I think, twice in our 2 recent council meetings, where both of the landlords who were appealing the case that had been elevated to council had repeat violations. And so I think Mayor Rodriguez, you had asked this question. It stuck in my brain, and I didn't want to lose this thread. I think it's a question worth asking and exploring. And so I hope you agree.
Eric?
Yeah, I'm really appreciative that Emma brought this up, because I remember how frustrating it was when, in that particular situation, where it looked like it was a repeat offender. You know, we don't want to be out of line with our punishments, but when it comes to creating the proper deterrence, I'm just of the opinion that what we have now is just not. It's more like a slap in the wrist. I mean, maybe a little more than a slap, but I don't think it's a strong enough deterrent. So I fully support this.
Thank you, Eric. Rick?
Yeah, thanks. I really do support this. I think it's important that we recognize that there's a difference in some of the ways this is enforced. You know, in the one case, we had a lot of people living there, and there was overcrowding, and overcrowding happens in San Mateo. The other case, people just needed to be relocated for a while, and then they were able to come back, right? But in any event, even if there's, I think this kind of increase in penalties can encourage property owners, even those who have overcrowding situations and probably know it, to maintain their properties in ways that are safe and healthy, right? So that's really I really lament that in the one case, so many people had to move away, okay? And who knows where they went. It's a very difficult situation for them, okay? They were paying like maybe $500 a month. I think some of them were paying twice that much. But, you know, how do you replace that? So thank you. I support this.
Well, that's 3 people speaking to supporting it. I see that moves it to the list. All right. Move to the list. Amherst, 6, 7, and 8 are already still happening. Are there any additional comments you wish to make about any of those?
Well, I will say that the idea that Eric raised about number 6 with the general plan and perhaps engaging a polling company throughout the general plan process at different intervals to gut check or statistically valid gut check our data and community input that we're getting. I think that that's a really interesting idea that I don't think that is sort of a twist on and augmenting the outreach plan that we have been doing. And I appreciate Karen Harrell's comments about, you know, wanting to see this come to the council for regular updates. I think that you know, that is in alignment with I think what we all want to see as well, that there is close oversight from this council. So I would just, you know, I think that that's kind of already there. I think we're already there in terms of what we're doing. Maybe the polling idea is a little bit of a difference, something to consider. And you know, I think that would change resources, and because there's a cost associated with that. But I
don't know that, Drew. I don't think that requires a modification of the priority as currently stated. It's still an A priority. It's still being resourced. These ideas can be fed into the management of the general plan process. Is that correct?
Yes, and when we come back with the next round of, after we've reviewed these items and determined the resources that are required, we can address this particular item with the ideas that have been brought up in terms of what additional resources would be needed, and if there are any concerns on staff's part with executing that.
Great. Then I'm done because 9 was already folded in.
Cool.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Diane's, which I think we nailed a bunch of yours already too. So let's see how we've done. So looking at Diane, walk us through. Number 1 is already there, and you heard that it's moving. You're comfortable?
Number 1, grade steps. Oh, yeah. Are you, yeah.
You with me?
There were some things that I put on here, as you see, they have green already, because I just think similarly to what we talked about with adding a few items, even though they're going to be done immediately. These are long ones, but I just want to keep them at the forefront for all of us. And I know they are about some of the green ones. And I don't know, just keeping them at the forefront because they're biggies.
Good.
Obviously.
Thanks,
1, 2, and 3 have all been,
yep.
They're already on.
Yep, 2's already on.
I'm trying to go fast for you, Tim.
Thanks.
Obviously, I'm always most bang for the buck. Let's see, I'm down with neighborhoods by implementing traffic mitigation measures. That's already on there with other folks joining. So the community services, similarly to what Rick had mentioned about having, you know, on our website, something where resources for business, small businesses in particular, can go and find resources to grant applications have come up and whatnot. The same thing I think would apply for individuals. So if we could have something, my thoughts were in particular, you know, and something on our website that says, these are the ways that you can, you know, when it's determined, go get a vaccine, or where testing continues to take place, those sorts of things. If we had a portal for that, I think it would be good for our residents as well.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to that one favorably?
I do. I'd support that.
Me too.
That's 3. Moves to the list.
Number 3 under community services, I noticed that library also had a similar priority. Let me go to the end and see if it's still on there. I don't see it on there. But as I recall from department contributions, they had something similar where there was going to be more to outreach with library resources to our seniors. So, and we already have the van, so I thought that was one way that it could happen.
Yeah, it didn't specifically say that under the staff plan, but it did have two. I think it was piloting a materials delivery program in the second half of this fiscal year to assist homebound patrons during the pandemic. Is that what you were thinking about, Diane?
I thought it was more geared towards seniors, but I'll take what you were at face value, what you were saying. I would venture to make it, maybe start there, but make it a tad broader.
Yeah.
And include some of our seniors who might be homebound permanently. You know?
Rick, go.
I support that. I think it's a great idea. Many seniors are home alone a lot, okay, and they can't get out to the library or, you know, a lot of places. Their senior center is closed right now, I think. So, yeah, this is a great thing. Good idea, Diane.
That's two. Do I have three?
Yeah, I'd be up for like learning more about what it would look like and just, you know, discussing it, not necessarily saying yes, but I think it's a good conversation to have. So I would like to be the third on that one.
Cool. Move to the list. So before I do that one though, Drew, this one has that feel to me that if the council puts it on the list and moves it forward, when you come back with analysis, this may be something that could be incorporated into the library's operational plan relatively easily, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, and I think it'll be an opportunity for James and the library staff to provide an update on what is in the works. So this one may largely be covered, but let us go back and analyze it once it's on the list.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Continuing down. So this is a blue one. It's on the list, but this is changing things. You want to talk to that one under social leadership, number one?
I think could we go back to the mental health under police? That was one we.
Oh, sorry.
I just skipped over.
All right, sorry. My bad. Go ahead.
That's okay. So we already have that we have a pilot program starting with a mental health professional being inserted into our police department. And I think what I was, let me hold on, mental health social services. I just wanted to really keep this on our radar, but then the other part of it was to actually have additional mental health training within our police department itself. And that's both as to how our officers are doing themselves with the stresses of the job, but then also in dealing with the public. So I know some of this is going on. Some of it may still need to be funded, and there might be grant opportunities available. So that's why I was interested in making this a priority and putting it on our council priorities.
Thank you. Other people wish to speak to it?
I support it.
As do I. When it came up at the council meeting, I had some questions, and I think this goes some distance in filling in some of those blanks that I had.
That's three supporting it. That goes to the list. Thank you, Diane. Now I'll move down to the blue one.
Okay. And blue means what? It's sort of on modified existing priority.
Right.
And how is this modified then?
Kathy, can you speak to that, or Drew?
Sure. So I think the conversion of older office space to housing was what we sort of highlighted as the primary difference from what is already on the council priority list.
And so my thought was, are there ways that we could incentivize it? You know, maybe you get more units, or, you know, there's something that would incentivize the conversion of older office space to housing. And I don't know exactly how those incentives could take place, but I thought it would be something worth exploring.
All right, do I have Rick?
Yeah, you know, I think that this is a discussion whose time has come. At the Heart Board, we have put together a strategic working group to figure out how to improve and do more of what we do, finding new partnerships, new funders. I think that really in this space right now on the peninsula, it's important to create relationships with corporations that have money. As you know, Diane, you were reaching out to Gilead and some other folks. I think we should ask Hart about how we can help with that, but also we should seek to form some of our own relationships on this. Regarding conversion of older office space, there is older office space available, even on some of the upper floors downtown, that may not be fully used. And I think that that's downtown's a prime space for people to be able to live and work and frequent our restaurants and other shops. It's a great place. By the way, while I'm on it, I guess I'm on a run. I think the Draper facility could become a nice senior housing facility. They don't have a lot of cars. I remember that was one of the big hangups with the conversion to what it is, and could be with anything else it may be, because I didn't say this, but Mr. Draper might be moving away. So he said it. So I think this is an idea that needs to be explored.
That's two voices. Do I have a third?
So can I jump in? This seems to me something that staff are already working on through the general plan process. And it would seem to me that that's exactly where it belongs, is identifying not just in the abstract where office space could be converted into housing, but in the very specific conversations that are taking place in the general plan process, identifying areas where we could put more housing, whether it's office space or whether it's retail, whatever it is right now, converting it. And I think that staff are already working on it through the general plan.
Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Joe's sentiments. I agree with him.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So rather than have it be its solo priority, I like it. I'd like to have it at the forefront on our priorities list, but really with how we do things, that seems reasonable to me, that it should be a priority within the general plan process. We'll keep the list more simple.
So with that notation, we don't need to pull this out and do something else with it. I think the notation then is it goes to, again, feedback and information into staff managing the general plan process. Is that correct, Drew?
Yes.
Okay. You go.
Yeah,
You go with that, Diane?
Yeah, I want to stay clearly within the structure of what this document does for our city. And I think that's accurate, folks. I really do. And again, as I went through this, I stayed within the structure that we had. I really wanted to, some of the greens are there because I really wanted to highlight for the public that we continue to work on these. A lot of these things are multi-year. So getting to the next one with diversity and equity, if we are going to have this task force, perhaps part of what they could be tasked with is some more community forums and training. I participated in some forums that we've had, and they were tremendously meaningful to me. And I think that that should be a part of what the task force does. So Tim, if we could maybe combine my number 2 under social leadership with this idea of the equity task force, if that's okay with Councilmember Lee.
Yep. You got thumbs up on that. So I think
okay, great.
That'll happen.
Okay, good.
Kathy,
yeah,
combination?
Yeah.
Already noted.
I just want to make sure that this document really is workable for all of us. Okay, so general plan. Listen, at some point, and I know COVID really impedes this, and we don't know we're on a pretty short time frame with our housing element. But having just come off the campaign trail and doing some door-to-door outreach, it is meaningful, and it is a way. Eric, it may not be fully scientific like we've talked about with a survey, but I think some door-to-door outreach, if we can get there safety-wise, wouldn't be a bad thing. So if we can fold that as part of what we're going to do on our general plan, I'd like to see it happen. And I understand there are constraints on it, certainly. But I will tell you, that one-on-one contact with people that may not come to a meeting, that may not chime in on Zoom, will really be important to a robust and comprehensive general plan update.
Thank you, Diane. Any other comments on those two items that are there? Wait a minute, Eric, you have a comment, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Diane was saying is, I mean, I like the idea of door-to-door knocking. I just want to make sure it's kind of like scientific door-to-door knocking, because it's just trying to get the most information we can and kind of taking the politics out of it and just trying to come up with like, how do really people feel? So I don't know if that's possible, but that's just kind of my response to what Diane just said.
Yeah, and this just falls into the hard to reach populations. I think there's a real lens, what's the word, not lens, but perhaps magnifying glass on what our outreach looks like. And if we can make it more robust, I think that's one way we could do it. Again, if we're safe. But it may not be as scientific as I duly noted, it may not be as scientific.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
I had a comment on that.
Say what?
Yeah, I had a comment on that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we can make it more scientific if we use some pre-printed material that people going door to door would have, which has a series of questions with some explanations to go with them, and then asks for people's opinions on those particular issues. And we would have to make decisions about what are the most important things to know about. But it can be made more scientific that way. And of course, we'd have to be able to deal with different languages. So thanks.
And that's what I had in mind.
Yeah.
Not just let's go chat, but an actual, construct to why we're at people's doors. We're on the same plane. Okay.
Well, Diane, you could just be a stalker that way, just.
Exactly. Councilmember Pappen here.
Yeah, you're talking.
I've been to a lot of places.
So the other ones they remain on our list. Just wanted to highlight them. The Park and Rec Facilities Master Plan is a big one, and we'll continue. Some of people's only experience with their city is by virtue of visiting a park.
Right.
And so it's something that really has to stay at the forefront, and that's the only reason I recognize made our little list a little longer, but with Denise's handy color coding, it allows us to move through pretty quickly. The small business one we've already talked about.
Yes.
With respect to the mayor, and I think that's it as far as my yellow, and now we have to move on to Gopals. We've had so many, we're going to be here all day.
I know. Joe, you have such a killer list there.
Tim, can I have 1 minute?
Go.
1 minute on the clock. Thank you. First, I want to talk about process. When I started with the city council, this was a meeting that I dreaded every single year. I did not think that the process was great. I didn't feel like the things that I wanted to work on were being heard. And I loved that the process changed, it shifted. I give a lot of credit to Larry Patterson, and I think that when Larry brought in Tim, it became an even better process. It was facilitated in such a great way, and it makes me feel heard. It makes me understand that we are one body. This is the most important meeting that we have every single year, to focus and hone in on what are the priorities we should be doing, what are the priorities that we have been working on that need to change. So process is so incredibly important. I want to give huge kudos to the entire staff who work on this. This is how we figure out what we're going to invest our time in. And it really is an investment in the entire community. It becomes that document we go back to again and again throughout the year. It is the most important document. And lastly, I want to give kudos to my colleagues, because I really think that these, the five of us, you four individuals and me, we have brought to the forefront the most important things that matter to the community, that make an impact, and we continue to do it. We don't agree on everything, but we are working tirelessly. We're all pulling on the rope in the same direction, And because of that, we see that we get access to the funds, the regional funds, the grant money, and the other things that benefit our community. So I want to see us continue to do that. I made a list, and it was all things that we were already working on. And so I just want to give a shout out to this this priority list, that I am proud of it. I am proud of staff, and I'm proud of my colleagues. And I'm so glad that we continue to do this. It's the most important meeting of the year. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Joe.
It was more than a minute, but we like it.
Yeah. I wasn't going to.
For a guy that didn't have priorities. No,
Shorter than some. It was shorter than some, Dan.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, I have some experience with other cities, and you're absolutely right, Joe. This meeting and how this city does it is it's terrific. It makes it manageable. We know how, and we let the public know how our money is going to be spent. I concur with you, and not all cities do it like we do it. So I'm with you on tooting our horn about it.
Good. Emirates? Go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in and to put a point on what has already been said, and for the public who don't necessarily get to sit in Drew Corbett, our city manager's office, this the objectives list is actually printed out and lives on the wall or the whiteboard of our city manager. So when we talk about accountability, when we talk about being, focused on what our objectives are, that is how focused we are, that it actually is something that Drew looks at every single day when he walks in his office. And so, I think that should be known, that we're not doing this as just a mental exercise. This is something that the whole organization is behind, and thanks to the leadership of Drew, there is true accountability and execution. So bravo.
Good. We're not done yet, guys. You're actually making kind of end of day kudos here, but I want to keep you going because we got more action yet. Rick, quick comment.
Just very quickly, I want to say that I agree with Joe. The process here has been greatly improved. And though it may not always work for me so well, I still really appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, we have two more items to look at, one of which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but under the staff proposed objectives, one is already on the list the first one's already on the list, correct, Kathy? Okay, good. Number 2, you want to talk to it, Drew?
Sure, and I'll speak briefly, and then if Chief Barberini wants to chime in, I'd certainly welcome him to do so. But this has been an ongoing initiative of the city's police department to enhance our accountability and our transparency and our overall efficiency. We just had council approval to integrate a mental health clinician into our operational model. There's continued and enhanced training related to de-escalation, crisis response, overall mindfulness. So some of the things that Councilmember Lee spoke of are also items on the high priority list for our police department. We're continuing to try to integrate technology to improve our training and our accountability, and continue our outreach on community engagement and being transparent with some new initiatives coming very soon that will be announced next week for our continued accountability. So really, we want to get these, want to make sure that these are on the priority list. They are a huge priority for staff. We also believe they're a large priority for council and feel like they warrant being on the citywide priority list. And with that, I'll turn things over to Chief Barberini if he wants to add any comments.
Thank you. No, just a couple of points to dovetail off of what the city manager had mentioned. The mental health clinician has now been, the MOU between the 4 cities and the county has now been approved by all parties. So we're looking forward to that moving forward. The next step there is the actual recruitment and onboarding of those clinicians. They will be county employees. So we are working with the county through their timeline to bring that to fruition. We also want to make a point that there was a discussion earlier about training for police officers regarding mental health concerns or in that field. A component of this partnership is to include training for staff provided by the embedded clinician who will be a BHRS employee. So we're looking forward to that. Not much more to be said. We are implementing a kind of a comprehensive mindfulness, resiliency, de-escalation training program that we're excited about. It's an 8-week program. And I believe we're going to be able to do that without me going to my boss or coming to the council to ask for additional funding. I think we're going to be able to absorb that within our existing means. I'd like to thank the council for their support technology-wise over the past year with their support of license plate readers and in our drone program. They've already proven beneficial in our investigative capabilities. As far as using leveraging technology to enhance accountability, we are beta testing dash cams that will supplement or complement our body-worn cameras. So that will give just another additional piece to that transparency and accountability track that we've been focused on since I've arrived here in February. I'm very appreciative to our staff and their willingness to get involved with our outreach efforts. As the city manager mentioned, we will be announcing some kind of an exciting project next week that we just don't want to put out yet because we're still working out the kinks. But in the next few days, there'll be information available to the public that had not been in the past. And then our monthly Real Talk San Mateo series has been pretty well received. In our strategy moving forward this year is to kind of integrate some specific topics. This last month, we focused it with the onset of Human Trafficking Awareness Month. We did a public service announcement and talking about human trafficking and its relationship to local street gangs and that nexus. So we think that we believe that was very well received. We're going to supplement that kind of an every other month type of approach to listening sessions. So in February, rather than having a pre-scripted kind of presentation, we're going to kind of open it up and have that conversation with the community like we've done several times before. We look forward to keep doing that. And then finally, the last item here is I just want to make a quick mention of AB 953. This is state law that requires us to start collecting data from traffic stops and other stops with the community regarding characteristics or perceived characteristics by officers. This is a heavy lift for us. We're working as a county. We're required to initiate collecting this data January 1 of 2022, and we're required to present that data to the State Department of Justice by January 1, 2023. We're leveraging our existing CADs and technologies to determine the best way to do that and do it not only accurately, but effectively and efficiently. We're working with other county departments to try to get that done. It will enhance our transparency efforts. We're looking for the best way to make that information available to the public in real time or as close to as possible. And while our deadline is January 1 of next year, we're looking to establish a testing or evaluation piece sometime over the summer, so we can look at whether the systems that we are pursuing or the processes that we think will work well will in fact satisfy what those needs are. So we're hoping we can give ourselves a 6-month window to kind of test that. So when we do finally flip that switch as required by state law on January 1, that we are best prepared to do that. So just a brief overview. I think that the city manager covered it all very well. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a deeper dive. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chief. Joe?
Chief, it sounded like the discussion regarding mental health clinician pilot program in Redwood City generated some feedback that they wanted expanded hours. Are you aware of that? And do you think that's doable?
Yeah, I think the main emphasis on this is it is really a pilot program. And I think we're not only looking at expanded hours, but expanding coverage countywide. I know that as part of this pilot program, we've agreed to make our
I just
clinicians.
received this email. Period.
I'm sorry. Just to Councilmember Gothel's point, yeah, we're aware of that feedback, and we want to emphasize that this is a pilot program. We're going to have these services available to us 40 hours per week. The one thing that I like to remind folks is this is not to replace or supplant any existing services that or partnerships that we already have access to, like Cora, Hot Team, the Smart Car. All of those resources are still in existence, and BHRS is in the field in our city and every other city on a daily basis on their own, providing services to individuals. So we're not replacing anything or trying to recreate the wheel. We're basically trying to supplement existing services, and I'm excited about it. I think if it works well, like I think it will be, I think there will be potential, not necessarily for a 24-hour program, because I don't know that that would be the most effective way to approach it, but I do think that we can definitely expand not only the hours, the number of hours served weekly, but also the geographical areas and jurisdictions that we plan on addressing in the pilot program.
Thanks, Chief.
Diane, you had your hand up. Do you have a comment?
It was an accident.
Oh, okay. I do have a question of you, if I might, though, Diane. You had an item that made the list, which was the public health, the police and mental health, expanding on coordinating police services and mental health. It sounds like this is taking place as I listen to the chief. Can your item be encompassed into this one? And not one?
Yeah, I just want to actually, so under Part B there where it says mindfulness, I'm coming at it from the mindfulness and the mental health of our rank and file, as well as their ability to deal within the community. This looks like it's heavy on the ability to deal with the community. Is that right? Or does it include my thoughts on the other item?
So our mindfulness program is a mindfulness/resiliency program, with the premise being that officer wellness contributes to strong officer performance. So it addresses the individual officer as an individual. It goes far beyond traditional law enforcement approaches. It looks at sleeping patterns. It looks at relationships. It looks at the individual with our belief that staff that is in a good place and in a strong place, physically, emotionally, and mentally, are better prepared to serve our community and deal with those issues in the field. So it does initially address officer wellness, but with the end goal to create stronger, more resilient individuals that we believe will be more productive police officers.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And then also, I think it bleeds over into sensitivity in responding to mental health crises, certainly, because you're aware of it, you're sort of self-aware, and then that brings it back to the community. So I appreciate that part of it. To answer your question, Tim, I think they can be folded in, or it's encompassed in what we see at the end here with our police department. Thank you for asking.
Okay, good. So Kathy, I think on producing the list, as I'm seeing it, this item is got a lot more words than the other one. So I think this one will encompass what the council already has moved to the list. And so this one can be added and those two can be combined. Is everybody in agreement with that? I see heads nodding. Yes, good. Okay, good. All right. Well, that takes us to our, oh, Diane, go. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I have one that I don't know if you're going to wrap up or not, but I was remiss to mention something, and I don't know if this would be an opportunity to do so.
Yes, I think so. This would be, yes, because what we're going to do next is look at the list and prioritize A, B, and C for staff so they can do the analysis for you. So yes, if you have an additional one, I think this is the absolute time to offer that.
Awesome. So I think all of us received some information from Julie Lynn Ruck with Central Labor about hazard pay for grocery workers. And there were some sample ordinances there. One of which was the Oakland one that had, it would only really apply if the grocer had a minimum of 500 employees nationwide. So this would really be hazard pay and the potential for mandating it with our larger grocery store employers. So it's something I was interested in taking up. I don't know if it should go on our goal setting, if you want to have maybe take it up at our next meeting for an emergency ordinance. I don't know, but I'm bringing it up now, and I'm not sure what to do with it. First of all, I'd like to know if there's support, and then I'm not sure what to do with it, strategically speaking. And I'll leave that to the group. If they're on board with it, we can talk about how to address it.
I think first of all, just to support what you said, Diane, I think the process should be right now, because it is kind of pandemic related. And if we adopt it as a strategic goal, it would not really go into effect until July. So I think it needs a more urgency sense to it, is my sense of process. Drew, you can correct me on that as we go through it. But I think your point is the council interested in hearing what might take place and then looking at a more short-term response to that, which Drew can tell you how that can be pulled off. But I think, is there interest from the council in looking at this item more closely?
Yeah, I mean, as maybe it could be folded into a future agenda for the a COVID update.
Yeah, I think if council is interested in having us look into this, I think if majority is interested, then we would come back with a study session. So we give us a chance to look into the issue, how it would be executed, how it would be enforced, and just some of the details, because we're aware of it, but have not done any looking into it so far.
So what's the pleasure of the council on this?
I'm interested.
Yes,
I think it might be a little more urgent than a study session, but and we do have some model ordinances to go off of. So my only request is that if it does go into a study session, we could do it fairly quickly.
I've heard 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. So Drew, what I hear is this is an item that is of interest, and to expedite however process you think is appropriate.
Understood.
Good. All right, Kathy, can you pull up the list?
Give me just a moment to get my screen sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, is everyone looking at a Word document?
Yes.
Is it large enough for everyone to see adequately?
I think so.
Okay, wonderful. I did my best to get the titles as close as I could. Some will need to be worked on further before we come back to the next.
So step-wise and process-wise, what we're doing now is we've gone through of all the ones that are new or to be modified, and we are now going to decide as a council, you're going to decide in your draft thinking so that staff can come back with an analysis of what the resource impact would be in phase 2 or step 2. So now we're looking at A, B, and C. And A means you want it to be resourced and you want it to be active in the forthcoming strategic plan. B is really good idea, and the second we have bandwidth, or if it's sequential, it needs to be implemented. And C is good idea, we want to keep it on radar, but we're not acting on it right now. Rick.
Yes, I'm looking and I don't see what is currently a C on the list, which is wage theft. Shouldn't it be on there?
No, because it's already on there.
Okay.
It's on your plan already, Rick, so we don't have to address it. We just didn't, what you chose not to do is upgrade it as a council.
Got it, thanks.
You're welcome.
I want to add that I do, on the bottom of this list, and we'll get to it, have a running list of immediate action items.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So we may want to also highlight any of these if you should be started earlier as we're going through them.
Yeah, I mean, is the creation of the Small Business Recovery Committee something we want to wait till June to start? I mean, it seems like that's a time sensitive action.
I agree.
some urgency there.
All right, let's go through this. So, council, you know how this plays out. What I need to have you look at is I want somebody to speak to what level you think it is as we go down the list. And then I don't need a lot of debate. I don't have to have all you weigh in. I'm going to do straw hands on this pretty quick. If somebody wants to offer a level, and then I'm going to say if it sounds like it's a reasonable thing, I'm going to see thumbs up or down as we go through it. So the first one, implement pedestrian and bicycle safety infrastructure. Anybody want to speak to what level? Eric.
A.
A. Everybody say A. A. It is. Good. Thank you. B. We moved that one to immediate action. So I guess that makes it an A by definition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2 of creation of a small business recovery committee is actually an A with immediate action. 3, development a plan to achieve a green fleet, moving this to an A from a B. It's currently a B. Rick, I think you're speaking to the fact that you want it to be an A. Is that correct?
That's right. Thank you.
Got it. And do I have thumbs up or not for A? I have 1, 2, 3. Got 3. I think 3 is sufficient to move it to an A. Thank you. Review municipal code provisions related to development review process. A. 2 A's.
Can I make a pitch for a B on this?
You've just got 3 A's, but you can make a pitch. Go for it, Joe.
I think that this really should involve the city attorney's office. We're going through a transition in the city attorney's office this year. I'd like to place it on the agenda for the new city attorney. And for that reason, I think maybe it would get pushed a little bit further out. I understand that it's also going to require collaboration with CDD. That's my only comment.
Drew.
Yeah, if I could just comment to that. I think Councilmember Gothel's, this is a pretty big and broad item that I think includes a number of things, and some of the things we're already working on, and we'll bring that back when we do the analysis of resources. The only comment I would make to yours is that this particular item, if it is an A, this particular aspect of it will not start until July 1st. And so the transition will have occurred at that point with the city attorney.
Fair point. Okay.
Okay, so going back to it, I think I saw 3 hands for this being an A. Can I see the thumbs again? I have 1, 2, 3. Good. I have 3 hands. Okay, good. That's an A. Communicate on a regular basis city's communication strategy and efforts. Wait a minute. I skipped something, didn't I? Sorry, my bad. Sorry, Kathy. Increase public awareness of community benefits for developers. This is the one that's maybe when they come back with the analysis, you can take off, because it's kind of a quick to do, I think, right? This is the number 2 on your list, right, Amber?
An aspect of that, which is the updating the what's happening in development webpage to have the community benefits listed under immediate action, but maybe there's more to this priority. So I left it also as a priority.
Oh, okay. Which way do you want to see that, Emirates?
I'm fine with it being the immediate action and then listed as an A. I think that increasing public awareness for community benefits is something that I hope will also be tackled in the general plan process. So I kind of see it already in existence and being worked on. So.
Okay. So, Drew, give me guidance. Which way are we where does this need to be, Drew, in your opinion? So if we have it under immediate action, which will bring some information back on, or does it also still need to be a council priority level statement to get to step B or step 2?
let's for the time being, let's put it as an A. And as we do this, as we do the evaluation of resources required, I think we can make comment as to what, if anything, might be able to be sort of an immediate action item, if that's workable.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So we're back to this one again, and I want to make sure I had 3 thumbs up on it, though. Do I have 3 thumbs still? I know I have Amaris's. She made it. Do I have 2 others? I have Rick. I need another one. Got it from Joe. Got it. Thank you. A.
I'm putting the question mark there just to indicate that we may revisit this during the next rounds.
Got it. Thank you. I think that's the same comment that for this one, correct?
Yes.
That's my thought. These were the 2 that you put in that same box.
Yes.
So are you both, is the council comfortable with this one also being an A question mark, recognizing you're going to get some information in the second round? I have 3 thumbs. Yes, good. A question mark there too. Good. Thank you. Equity Task Force.
A.
1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 4. Got him. A. Thank you. Accessibility to strengthen existing red tag ordinance.
A.
Yes, A.
I think, yeah, you can do an A without a whole lot of resources on that one.
Good. Got an A there. Web portal for COVID relief information.
Yes.
Would this be more of an immediate action though, because necessary sooner?
Yes.
Yeah. Senior library outreach program with home delivery for homebound seniors.
This is also a COVID related item. I think if we're going to do it, we should look at trying to kickstart it.
Do we have the one for the web portal for COVID relief information for our businesses? Is that?
I think
Did
that's.
we cover that?
That's live.
Yeah, that
Sorry?
one is already in existence.
Yeah.
No, I think it's up above. It's listed.
Is it up above? I can't see it. So
Oh, so the one up above is more about creating a small business recovery committee.
oh, there it is. Okay.
We do have a very active business resource COVID page since the start of the pandemic that we update regularly.
So
Okay, got it. Sorry.
Okay, you update it. In other words, if the federal government announces new programs or the state new programs, you add them there right away.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So Tim, I'd like to recommend that for the senior library outreach program that we put that into the same category as the ones with the A question mark. I think there are aspects of that could be immediate action, but I want the library, I want to give them an opportunity to evaluate and come back and provide a report about what they're currently doing and then where there are any gaps that council may see that would like to get this onto the strategic plan for the following year.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. I thought I was going to go back and comment on that, so I'm glad you caught that one. I was just looking at it going, wait a minute, we had a staff action. I wanted to see where that was going to compare. So I think that's a good thing for the council. You'll get that in the second step then. Enhanced police accountability, transparency. We just.
A.
What'd you say?
A.
A, okay, good. 1A, 2 A's, 3 A's. We got 3 A's. There we go. The other are immediate action items. Do they require any other action by the council at this point?
I think the hazard pay does.
No, I think that.
Oh, these are immediate action items.
These are immediate action items. So I'm thinking, Drew, do you need anything else from the council on these right now?
No.
All right. Well, in that case, my friends, we have completed our work for today. I don't know how to break it to you, but we kind of did it again, so that's really good. And so I'm looking at it, you now, I'll just remind you once more that you have completed step 1 of your planning process. Step 2 is staff will do analysis of your currently assigned A's and come back to you in a study session to show you, okay, given what your list here, here's the resources impact, and offer any trade-offs or clarifications as needed as you go through it. Rick, you have a question or comment?
You know, I just wanted to say, I know I discussed this earlier, but this is a form that Milpitas is using. It does not require employers to do anything but hang it on the wall where employers can see it. All it does is describe what wage theft is, and it points them at the Department of Labor standards. I really think we should be able to at least do that, because right now, there's nothing at work that says to people, if these things are happening to you, here's something you can do about it. There's nothing there, okay? And we know it happens, okay? So I know we're past the time, but I really feel this is like, all we have to do is put our logo on the top, and we don't have to change anything else. It just says Department of Labor Standards down here. It's got their phone number.
Keep lobbying, Rick. I'm glad you're an advocate, and I'm glad you're passionate for that, because I think it's a big issue. I think it's just tricky for local municipalities to handle it. You've got one alternative. Keep sharing that information with your colleagues, and we can see what can happen out of that.
I went to the school of organize.
I know. Yeah. Keep it up, buddy. All right. Anything else? Then I turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know if there's anything else to do besides closing the meeting. Am I missing anything?
Don't
All
think
right.
so.
Well, have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, Tim, this has been another great year in terms of this process. I echo a lot of the sentiments that Joe said earlier. This is how it's supposed to be done. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone.